Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alexandria Kostial. Alexandria Kostial. Born on September 11, 1997 in St. Louis, Missouri, Alexandria, commonly known as Ally, is the adorable daughter of Cindy and Keith and has an older brother named Andrew. Alexandria has a friendly and approachable personality. From a young age, Alexandria's bright smile and warm personality attracted people. As she grew up, Alexandria's positive energy spread a positive life to those around her. She spends time with her friends, classmates, and family members. Alexandria's ability to connect with people from all walks of life is truly remarkable. Alexandria is a charming and compassionate person who always helps those in need. She attended Lindbergh High School, where she developed her passion for athletics. During high school, Alexandria met her best friend, Maddie Norris, and they formed a close bond and friendship that grew into a deep and trusting sisterly bond. Alexandria and Maddie shared a passion for exploring life and trying new experiences. Together, they faced challenges, laughed, and made lasting memories. During their time together, they enjoyed afternoons spent watching movies. One of their favorite movies was Legally Blonde. Once Alexandria got her driver's license, she and Maddie often drove around town in Alexandria's convertible. As their senior year approached, Alexandria still had no date for the upcoming prom. Although a few guys had asked her out, she had never had a serious relationship or boyfriend. Feeling frustrated, she considered skipping the event. However, Maddie asked to be Alexandria's dance partner at the prom. Alexandria was deeply moved, and so Alexandria wore a beautiful red dress to the prom. After graduating from high school, Alexandria made her dream of attending the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi come true. She was drawn to the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, because of its large student body. An avid sports fan, she was especially impressed by the school's renowned football program. In 2006, Alexandria began her freshman year at Ole Miss, where she majored in marketing and business. While at Ole Miss, Alexandria joined a sorority and became one of its founding members. She is also president of the Ole Miss Golf Club. Alexandria, with a strong passion for sunsets, she took to taking pictures to capture their beauty, with the aim of sharing this beauty with the world. Alexandria created an Instagram account to showcase her beautiful sunset photos. One night, while at a bar in downtown Oxford, Alexandria met Brandon Theld, a charming young man from Fort Worth, Texas. She was immediately attracted to him and invited him to several sorority dances. Over time, Alexandria's feelings for Brandon grew. Born into a loving Christian family, Brandon had a fulfilling childhood, with his father being a prominent doctor in Fort Worth. Growing up, Brandon had a classic Texas childhood filled with activities like hunting, fishing, and soccer. Alexandria's love of the outdoors made him eager to participate in a variety of outdoor activities. During school breaks, Alexandria's best friend Maddie from St. Louis visited Alexandria in Oxford, Mississippi. According to Alexandria, Maddie was excited to see Brandon. However, during Maddie's time there, Brandon did not come to visit and see Alexandria's deceased best friend. This left her heartbroken. Maddie witnessed Alexandria's sadness and felt sorry for her friend. Despite her trauma, Alexandria remained strong and focused on her studies at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria had a great first year, with high grades, new friends, and a strong sense of humor. The summer of 2019, right before Alexandria's senior year, was a time of great anticipation for Alexandria and her parents, Cindy and Keith. They were all looking forward to her senior year at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria's parents decided to visit her at Oxford University for a few days. They were happy to see how quickly their daughter adjusted to her new surroundings. At the time, Alexandria was busy teaching a gym class and attending summer school. When her parents arrived, Alexandria gave them a tour of the campus, showing them her favorite spots in town. The visit gave her parents, Cindy and Keith, the opportunity to see firsthand how their daughter has grown and be proud of all she has accomplished. Cindy, her mother, cooks Alexandria's favorite dinner. During the meal, they shared fond memories. Alexandria's parents had originally planned to return home to St. Louis, but she asked them to stay an extra day so they could experience more of what Oxford had to offer. Cindy and Keith agreed to extend their stay. On July 19th, after returning home, her parents called Alexandria around 7 p.m. She answered the phone, still sleepy from her nap, and explained to her mother that she planned to go out with friends that evening. Cindy told her daughter that she loved Alexandria and hung up. Little did she know that would be the last time she would speak to her daughter. Sardis Lake is a large recreational area 30 minutes from Oxford that has many hunting camps. The area is large and is patrolled by the local police department for safety. On June 20, 2019, a police officer began patrolling Sardis Lake early in the morning. As the officer drove around the lake, he noticed near a picnic table the body of a young woman lying on the ground. The officer was shocked by the discovery and immediately called for help. Other officers and paramedics arrived on the scene a few minutes later. Upon arrival, the officer found a wallet in a nearby ditch. When the wallet was opened, it contained an Old Miss school ID and a driver's license identifying the owner as Alexandria Kostial. Later, after the discovery of Alexandria's body at Sardis Lake, the police had to notify her parents, Cindy and Keith. However, they were away from home in St. Louis at the time. Her mother was devastated when she heard the news about her daughter. The news of Alexandria's death shocked her friends as well as her parents. Alexandria's friends turned to social media, using the hashtag #JusticeForAllie to express their grief and demand justice for her. They share fond memories of Alexandria in social media posts, talking about the positive impact she had on their lives. And her friends sent their condolences to her family. Following the tragic death of Alexandria, we express our deepest condolences to the Alexandria family during this extremely difficult time. At the crime scene near Sardis Lake, police found White Claw water bottles and .40 caliber shell casings on the ground. A ballistics expert was called in to analyze the scene and piece together the events surrounding Alexandria's murder. The expert determined that the killer was initially sitting across from Alexandria on a picnic bench when they fired the first shots. However, after the first shot, the killer stood up and began walking around the table toward Alexandria, firing multiple shots as they approached. One bullet missed Alexandria and struck the wooden picnic table. While searching for evidence, police searched Alexandria's apartment but did not find her phone. However, they discovered that Alexandria's Apple Watch had some unexpected syncs with her text messages the night before she was killed. When they examined the messages, they discovered that Alexandria had been having lengthy conversations with Brandon Thade. The messages revealed that Alexandria and Brandon had planned to meet before she was killed. Police investigating Alexandria's murder contacted Brandon on Sunday morning to ask to meet at the police station. However, Brandon declined the invitation that day but agreed to meet the next day at 8:30 a.m. Monday. On Monday, Brandon failed to show up at the police station as scheduled, prompting police to trace his cell phone. Cell phone data showed that Brandon was traveling south on Interstate 55 toward Memphis, leading police to suspect that he was trying to flee. As a result, they issued an arrest warrant and alert for his vehicle, which was easily identifiable due to its unique license plate. 2 hours after the warrant was issued for Brandon, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force located his vehicle at a gas station. Brandon was found sitting in his vehicle at a gas pump, where task force agents arrested him and notified Mississippi police. When police searched Brandon's vehicle, they discovered a .40 caliber handgun. Brandon's clothing was also found to be covered in blood after he exited the vehicle. After his arrest and return to Mississippi, police began tracking Brandon in the days leading up to the Alexandria murders. On Saturday, July 20th, Brandon visited friends and went bowling. The next day, Brandon visited another friend, bringing a six-pack of beer and the same .40 caliber handgun found in his vehicle. The friend reported that they talked for a while, but when the friend woke up on Monday, Brandon was no longer there. Brandon's background check did not reveal any history of violence or altercations. Interviews with friends and family members of both Brandon and Alexandria provided detailed information about the couple's history. They met at a local bar in Oxford during their freshman year and initially began dating. However, their relationship declined during their sophomore year. Notably, Alexandria's loved ones noticed a change in her demeanor, as she seemed to be more invested in the relationship than Brandon. This imbalance led to tension between the two. Brandon eventually blocked Alexandria from contacting him because she frequently went out at night, drank, and then called him. A year after their breakup, Brandon and Alexandria got back together the summer before Alexandria's senior year. They decided to rekindle their relationship. However, the reunion did not last long. Brandon was eventually charged with Alexandria's murder, specifically premeditated murder, which carries the death penalty. When news of Brandon's arrest spread, it caused widespread shock and attracted intense media attention in Oxford. The community was caught up in speculation and rumors as people shared their theories about the case. Reporters descended on the town, seeking interviews with people close to Alexandria and Brandon. In September 2019, Brandon pleaded not guilty to murder. As police continued to gather evidence, they reviewed text messages exchanged between Brandon and Alexandria before her murder. The messages revealed that Alexandria was concerned that she might be pregnant in April 2019, 3 months before her death. On April 14th, Alexandria sent Brandon a photo of a home pregnancy test result. He made it clear that they would not keep the baby and suggested that they could buy abortion pills. Alexandria, however, did not want an abortion, and she thought that she would meet someone who would love her and her child. Despite this, Brandon was adamantly against having a child, telling Alexandria that it would ruin his life. Police also discovered surveillance footage that showed Alexandria leaving a bar in Oxford Square at around 11:45 p.m. on July 18th. About an hour later, at 1:30 a.m., Alexandria met Brandon and he drove them to Sardis Lake. Brandon's defense attorney claimed that he and Alexandria had been drinking throughout the day. At Sardis Lake, they sat at a picnic table and listened to music. Brandon then got up and walked to his truck, where he used drugs. He walked back to Alexandria, returned to his truck, and retrieved a .40 caliber gun. By the time Brandon retrieved his gun, there had been a shooting on the other side of the lake. After the incident, Brandon and Alexandria continued to talk, but the situation became heated, and Brandon shot her. According to the defense, Brandon's actions were influenced by the combined effects of drugs and alcohol. The police and Alexandria's family saw the incident from a different perspective. They believed that Brandon killed Alexandria because he suspected she was pregnant, which he believed would ruin his life. To them, the murder appeared premeditated. Brandon agreed to a plea deal with state police on August 27, 2021, avoiding the death penalty. Under the deal, Brandon admitted to first-degree murder and received a life sentence without parole. Alexandria's loved ones attended the hearing. Brandon addressed Alexandria's family after the sentencing, expressing remorse for his actions and asking for their forgiveness. He acknowledged the great pain he had caused and hoped they could find forgiveness in their hearts. Although Alexandria's autopsy report showed that she was not pregnant at the time of her death, her mother, Cindy, believes that Alexandria was pregnant and lost the baby. Hello again, true crime fans. we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Polly Klaas. Polly Klaas was born on January 3, 1981, in Fairfax, California. She lived with her parents, Mark and Eva, and her younger sister Annie. When Polly was very young, her parents divorced. Afterwards, Polly, her younger sister, and their mother moved to Petaluma, California. Mark has started a new relationship after he and Eva divorced, and Polly gets along well with her father's new partner. After her parents got divorced, Polly made a conscious effort to maintain a good relationship with both her mother and father, helping to keep the peace within the family. As a child, Polly was described as quiet and innocent. Although she had few friends and was generally shy, she excelled in theater. Polly actively participated in school plays, community musicals, and often secured lead roles. Her passion for theater fueled her dream of becoming a talented actress in the musical theater field. Besides, Polly also enjoys having sleepovers at friends' houses or inviting them to her house. These sleepovers are usually with her close group of friends. On October 1, 1993, Polly invited two friends, Jillian and Kate, to her home for a sleepover. Her mother, Eva, agreed to let the girls spend the night. That evening, the three girls had dinner and spent the first few hours together without incident. When Eva started feeling unwell with a bad headache, she decided to go to bed, around 9:45 p.m., and asked the girls to wake her if they needed anything. Eva later said she took 2 sleeping pills and fell asleep after 11 p.m. She was suddenly awakened by Jillian and Kate screaming. The girls frantically told Eva that Polly had been taken by a man who broke into the house. Eva immediately called the police and then checked on her other daughter, Annie. She was in the room, and she didn't seem to know what was going on. When the police arrived, they questioned Jillian and Kate. According to the girls, they had been in Polly's room playing, trying on different costumes for Halloween. It was around 11 p.m. when Polly suggested it was bedtime, and her friends concurred. And when Polly went to get the inflatable bed from her mother, she met a man standing at the door. The man held a knife and was not wearing a mask. But since we're approaching Halloween, the girls initially thought it was a joke and started laughing. However, they quickly realized the situation was not a joke at all. A man forcefully entered a house and became enraged when the 3 girls inside began to laugh. In a fit of anger, he restrained Jillian and Kate by tying their hands and feet and then demanded to know who lived in the house. Each girl replied that it was Polly. The man then proceeded to cover Jillian and Kate's heads with pillowcases and instructed them to count to 1,000. He told them that he would temporarily take Polly away, but promised to return her shortly. However, once Jillian and Kate realized the man had left the house, they tried to free themselves, which took approximately half an hour. They left the room and immediately informed Eva that Polly was missing and that a man had taken her. They reported the incident to the police, providing a brief description of the man. This allowed the officers to create a sketch of the suspect to aid in the search. Unfortunately, there was limited evidence found at the scene. A few footprints were discovered, but they all belonged to Polly, Eva, Annie, or friends who had visited the house in the days leading up to the incident. Some fabric fibers found on the carpet in Polly's room were significantly different from those in the carpet at her home. Analysis revealed that they belonged to a car's carpet. Police searched cars belonging to people the family knew but found no match, leading them to believe the fibers came from the kidnapper's car. A palm print was also found, but it couldn't be matched to anyone in the databases at the time because fingerprinting and DNA technology weren't advanced enough. However, the print was saved for possible comparison to a suspect in the future. In addition to the fibers, a piece of fabric resembling silk was found in Polly's room. It appeared to have been cut from a garment with scissors and had a unique pattern. The police believed this could be a valuable piece of evidence in the future. A hair was also found, but its origin was unknown. The DNA technology weren't developed at the time prevented analysis, making it impossible to determine who the hair belonged to. The search for Polly was one of the largest in United States history at that time, with many volunteers joining in. Around 4,000 people, including police and volunteers, searched her neighborhood, vacant lots, and nearby estates for Polly. The police attempted to find the driver who resembled the sketch, but were unsuccessful. Time was of the essence, as police hoped to find Polly within 24 hours of her disappearance, after which it would be highly unlikely to find her alive. The investigation was handed over to the FBI, who also actively worked to find Polly as soon as possible. However, as each day passes, the chances of finding her alive diminish. The police asked people who lived nearby if they saw or heard anything unusual on the night Polly was abducted. Several neighbors reported seeing a suspicious man wandering around the neighborhood. Although he looked unusual, at the time, he did not cause any concern, so they did not contact the emergency services. It wasn't until police showed the neighbors the sketch of suspect, they realized it was the same person. To gather more information about Polly's disappearance, police interviewed every teacher and staff member at the school she attended. They focused on whether anyone knew the suspect or had any details about Polly's situation. However, none of them had any knowledge about the incident, and everyone had an alibi for the time of the incident. Additionally, none of the school staff matched the suspect's description. In their investigation, the police went as far as comparing fibers found at Polly's home with the car mats of the school staff's vehicles. But all of them do not coincide. With each passing day, the sense of desperation among the family, the authorities, and the public grew. They feared that the kidnapper posed a threat to society. This added to the urgency for the police to solve the case. A $200,000 reward was offered for any information that could help locate Polly. The reward was sponsored by actress Winona Ryder, who also held a press conference calling on the public to pray for Polly's safe return. Also, Polly's case happened in 1993, a time when the internet was still in its early stages of development. Law enforcement agencies, including the police and the FBI, were not yet familiar with using the internet to disseminate information or search for missing persons. 3 people from California took matters into their own hands and posted information about Polly on the internet. This included a picture of Polly, a sketch of her suspected kidnapper, and a reward advertisement for any useful clues. At the time, there was no social media. But the information still managed to spread and reach approximately 25 million people in the US. FBI investigators believe that social media can play a significant role in their investigation into Polly's disappearance. Although a large number of people are following the case online, but no clues from internet users could help solve the case. Nevertheless, the campaign has attracted a large number of volunteers, and several call centers have been set up to handle the volume of calls received each day. As a result, families of other missing children reached out to the Polly family for support, hoping to find their own children too. It had been weeks since Polly's abduction, and investigators were growing increasingly frustrated. They had no new leads and had yet to identify the kidnapper, making DNA comparisons impossible. Just when things seemed bleak, Polly's father, Mark, received a phone call from a girl claiming to be Polly. She explained that she was at a hotel and that her kidnapper had temporarily left her alone, allowing her to make the call. The girl then hung up, and Mark immediately informed the police. Unfortunately, the FBI did not have tools to trace the call at the time, so they had to wait for another call, in the hoping it would give them the opportunity to trace the kidnapper's location. A few hours later, the second call came. It was the same girl who had spoken to Mark earlier. The police were able to trace this call, but were surprised to find that it did not lead to a hotel, as the girl had claimed, but rather to a residential neighborhood. When officers arrived at the house from which the call was made, they discovered it was a prank call made by a teenage girl around the same age as Polly. The girl's voice was similar to Polly's, which was the reason behind the confusion. According to her, her friends had dared her to make the call. She wasn't arrested or taken to the police station, but her parents were asked to control her behavior and advise her against making such serious and false claims in the future. On November 28, 1993, about 2 months after Polly's disappearance, a woman contacted the police to report finding 3 suspicious items on her large plot of land. Upon further investigation by the police and FBI, they discovered 3 crucial pieces of evidence: a piece of silk identical to the one found in Polly's room, a pair of ballet ties that Eva reported missing on the night of Polly's disappearance, and duct tape. This led the police to speculate that Polly was likely in the area. The FBI uncovered more information that shed light on the case. On the day Polly went missing, the same woman had reported to the police that strangers had been frequently visiting her plot of land. The property didn't have a fence around it, despite signs indicating it was private. As a result, many strangers unknowingly trespassed on the land, with the owner often encountering intruders. However, one incident stood out, especially considering it occurred on the night Polly was abducted. On that evening, a man in a car drove onto the property, but his vehicle got stuck in the mud. The nanny, who looking after the homeowner's son, was the first to see the man but was too scared to approach him. The owner also chose not to approach the man due to a fierce look in his eyes, so they decided to call the police. When the officers arrived, they questioned the man, who claimed he was unaware he was on private property and promised to leave immediately. However, he asked for help pulling his car out of the mud. The police observed that the man was visibly nervous and sweating, appearing to be under the influence of a substance. But they were unable to administer a drug test and couldn't arrest him since he wasn't being violent. Finally, the policeman helped him get the car out of the mud, and the man drove away. The man's name was Richard Allen Davis, born in 1954 in San Francisco, California. Richard's childhood was marked by violence at the hands of his parents, particularly when he was 12 years old. This led to his parents' separation, and his mother completely disowned him, stating she wanted nothing to do with her son and leaving him in the care of his father. Richard's father was highly irresponsible, often leaving the house for extended periods of time, sometimes days, and leaving Richard alone. Richard sometimes stayed with neighbors or would seek out relatives. Richard started committing crimes when he was a teenager. He started stealing, got into fights, and spent several months in a reformatory school. At the age of 17, he committed a violent robbery that almost resulted in the death of the victim. The judge offered Richard 2 options: reform school or joining the U.S. Army. Richard chose to join the Army, but he was unable to maintain good behavior. As a result, he was dishonorably discharged after serving for less than 2 years. When Richard was approximately 20 years old, he was convicted of robbery, kidnapping, and received a 15-year sentence. However, due to good behavior, he was paroled after serving just 1 year. During that time, Richard was haunted by another charge. Many of Richard's friends believed he had killed a 19-year-old woman named Marlene, despite the police determining she had left willingly. Marlene's close friends suspected Richard was the culprit responsible for her death the night they attended a party together. Nonetheless, these allegations remained unsubstantiated rumors at the time. Richard was in financial trouble, and as such, he did not have a permanent home, leaving it unknown where he actually lived. The police issued an internal warning to officers, advising them to exercise extreme caution when interacting with him. Fearing Richard might flee California or even the United States, the authorities chose not to share any information with the media. Richard was ultimately arrested on November 13, 1993. He was driving under the influence and was stopped by a police officer. A breathalyzer test was administered, which Richard failed. Richard matching the suspect's description in the Polly Klaas kidnapping case. The police carefully approached Richard and arrested him for violating his probation due to he had violated his alcohol level while driving. However, the real reason for the arrest was the kidnapping. At the police station, Richard's true identity was revealed, and he was informed that he was under arrest in connection with the Polly Klaas kidnapping case. During the interrogation, Richard initially denied the charges but ultimately confessed to the crime. Further evidence, including a palm print matching the one found at the scene and fabric fibers from his car's carpet matching those found Polly's house, supported Richard's guilt. When questioned, Polly Klaas' friends identified Richard as the kidnapper. Moreover, an identical piece of fabric was found in Richard's car and on piece of land of the woman who had called the police, providing additional evidence against him. The suspect eventually admitted to the crime after much evidence pointed to his guilt. Richard claimed that on the day of the incident, he had been using legal substances with friends and was not feeling well. Despite this, he decided to commit a burglary and drove to a neighborhood where he spotted a house with an open window. He climbed in through the window, searching for valuables, and was about to leave when he encountered Polly. She was extremely frightened, and Richard made the decision to abduct her. He put Polly in the back seat of his car and drove to a secluded area, where he sexually assaulted her. After this, he got back in the driver's seat and continued driving. Eventually, Richard's car got stuck in the mud on private property, where a woman and her babysitter saw him with Polly in the back seat. The police arrived to help him, pulling the car out of the mud. Tragically, after they assisted him, Richard drove away and strangled Polly to death. He later revealed to the police the location of her body and them to begin a search. On December 4, 1993, approximately 2 months after Polly Klaas's disappearance, her body was discovered in a grave by the side of a highway, which was dug by Richard. A forensic examination was conducted and confirmed that the cause of Polly's death was strangulation, which was consistent with Richard's previous statements. The estimated date of death was roughly consistent with the day she went missing. With this evidence, Richard went on trial for kidnapping, murder, and rape. During the trial, Richard was given the opportunity to say a few words. In his statement, he apologized to Polly's family but also made the shocking accusation that her father had been sexually abusing her. According to Richard, Polly told him that her father's actions towards her were something Richard should not have done to her. This accusation angered Polly's father to the point that he became violent and was restrained by several people in the courtroom to prevent him from attacking Richard. Everyone was shocked by Richard's words, mainly because he showed no remorse for his statement, and many suspected that Polly's father had abused her. Despite no evidence to prove it, Richard was found guilty of Polly Klaas kidnapping and murder on June 18, 1996, subsequently received a death sentence in August. He attempted to appeal but was unsuccessful. In 2006, Richard was found unresponsive in his cell after overdosing on pills, but was revived and returned to prison. Richard's lawyer made an unsuccessful attempt to appeal the conviction to the Supreme Court in 2009. The Supreme Court upheld Richard's death sentence, with his attorney indicating plans to file further appeals. These ongoing appeals have led to a prolonged stay on death row. It is anticipated that once the appeals process concludes, the execution will proceed. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Wayne Jones. Michael Wayne Jones was born on May 1, 1981, in Brattleboro, Vermont. His life was complicated and difficult from a young age. Michael witnessed his parents repeatedly physically and mentally abusing each other, and he himself was also subjected to this abuse. When Michael was young, his father went to prison for unclear reasons, leaving him feeling empty and deeply affected. His mother remarried and had another son, Dana, bringing some happiness to Michael's life. However, their home life remained troubled. Michael's stepfather had trouble maintaining stable employment, which put a financial strain on his mother, forcing her to work 2 jobs to support the family. The stepfather was aggressive toward Michael and Dana. He used physical punishment. This has created an atmosphere that makes people feel scared and controlled. Michael was harshly punished for small mistakes, such as being late to school, and was often locked in a shed and subjected to sexual abuse. Michael's difficult life did not harden him. Instead, he showed kindness and a strong instinct to protect others, particularly his younger brother Dana. He is often the one to admit mistakes and take punishment for Dana, which brings the 2 brothers closer. Dana admired Michael's courage and love. Michael's stepfather was extremely controlling and rarely allowed him to interact with other children. His mother was too afraid of her husband to stand up for Michael or herself. This created a home environment that was isolated, secretive, and oppressive. With no outside help, Michael and Dana suffered ongoing abuse. The neighbors suspected that something was wrong in the household. In a desperate attempt to escape, Michael ran away from home but didn't know where to go. He was eventually found by authorities and shared the sad story of his family life. Unfortunately, no one helped him with his situation. Michael had difficulty expressing his genuine emotions, instead concealing them beneath a facade of indifference. He struggled with depression in his teenage years, which significantly impacted his mental well-being. However, at school, he found some relief from his struggles. Despite being introverted and feeling lonely, having responsibilities helped distract him from his difficult home life. Fortunately, Michael met Dorothy, a local business owner. Dorothy introduced him to her daughter, and although the daughter's name is not known, but Michael formed a strong bond with her. As time passed, their friendship blossomed into romance, navigating its share of highs and lows. This relationship brought out Michael's gentle, thoughtful, and cautious nature, revealing a more nuanced side of his personality. Dorothy was happy to see Michael in a new light, but at the same time, she felt concerned. She observed that he became uneasy whenever it was time to go home. Despite her daughter's frequent visits with Michael, he made a concerted effort to keep her away from his residence. Concerned by these signs, Dorothy decided to have deeper conversations with Michael. Michael eventually opened up to Dorothy about his concerns for his mother and brother's well-being. This enabled Dorothy to recognize the emotional burden and suffering that Michael was experiencing. After finishing high school, Michael enlisted in the United States Navy, which marked the start of a new chapter in his life. The Navy instills in him a sense of direction and purpose within a highly organized environment. As Michael developed a strong affection for the Navy, he realized that he had made the right choice. His newfound sense of happiness is largely due to his close relationship with his teammates. Although he would occasionally drink, Michael was always responsible and showed up for work, proving to be a calm and composed individual. During this time, Michael was dating a colleague. However, he quickly realized that the relationship was unhealthy when she became violent towards him. This brought back painful memories of his childhood. As his depression worsened, he realized he needed to end the relationship. Following the breakup, Michael dedicated himself to furthering his career. He pursued specialized training in combat medical care, which ultimately led to his appointment as a medic in the Marine Corps. Afterward, Michael met Sarah, and they fell deeply in love, eventually getting married. After getting married, Michael resigned from the Marines so he could devote his time to supporting his wife. Sarah had a positive impact on Michael's life, encouraging him to make good choices. Together, they had 3 children, and Michael was determined to be a devoted father, providing them with the best possible upbringing. In their relationship, Sarah often took the lead in decision-making, but Michael was always supportive of her choices. In 2011, Sarah found a job in Orange County, Central Florida, and the family moved there. She worked at the Mount Dora Animal Hospital, which was managed by Bo Delaporte. After Michael had difficulty finding a job, Sarah convinced Delaporte to take him on. She also emphasized the experience Michael had gained from his previous job. Michael quickly settled into his new role and showed outstanding commitment. Michael emanated happiness and had a clear passion for his work. Michael's positive demeanor made him highly sought after by pet owners. His employers, particularly Delaporte, grew fond of him, and their relationship blossomed into a strong friendship built on trust. Delaporte even entrusted him with some management responsibilities at the animal hospital. In 2014, Delaporte hired KCI, a new veterinary technician. Born on December 23, 1986, in Ion, Indiana, KCI was the second of 3 daughters to Nikki and David. She had 2 siblings, named Sarah and Brandy. She brought immense joy and positivity to her family, and also spread that energy to those around her. As KCI grew older, her love and concern for those around her deepened, fueled by her spiritual beliefs and moral principles. This gives her the strength to face life's challenges. In high school, KCI met Richard, and they were initially attracted to each other. However, as they dated, Richard noticed KCI's jealous and possessive tendencies. Her insecurity sometimes led to hurtful words and actions. Nevertheless, Richard remained patient and calm, and they eventually married after completing their studies. Over time, KCI's mother moved to Florida. Sarah and Brandy soon followed. Due to KCI's close relationship with her family, she and Richard relocated to Florida in 2009. After settling in, KCI worked occasionally as a transporter and sometimes as a dog groomer. She also began learning the trade of a veterinary technician. During this time, Casey and Richard welcomed their first child, Cameron. KCI was devoted to Cameron's well-being and made it her top priority. A few years later, Casey and Richard had their second child, Preston. The children grew in a happy environment filled with laughter and loving care. As KCI advanced in her veterinary technician career, she found a job at an animal clinic. There, she met Michael, who was Delaporte's right-hand man. Michael and KCI got along well, but Delaporte and Sarah both suspect that there may be something more than mere friendship between them. Even though both of them have families, but Michael found himself attracted to KCI. This attraction affected his focus and performance at work. Michael tried his best to satisfy KCI's needs, and she reciprocated Michael's feelings, and as a result they began an affair. Sarah and Michael decided to get a divorce, as did KCI and her spouse, Richard. After the divorce, Sarah was granted custody of her 3 children and relocated to Jacksonville. In contrast, KCI and Richard chose to share custody of their children, Cameron and Preston, according to a certain rule. KCI took her parenting responsibilities seriously and made sure to transport the children as agreed. Delaporte's frustration increased as Michael's work performance at the clinic continued to deteriorate. To make matters worse, Michael inappropriately approached other employees, overstepping professional boundaries. A betrayal occurred when Michael asked for time off, claiming his mother had passed away, only to use the leave for a beach vacation. Delaporte discovered the truth and subsequently terminated Michael's employment. Seeking revenge, Michael burglarized the clinic, stealing money, computer equipment, and even a gun. Delaporte identified Michael as the perpetrator and contacted the authorities. With KCI's assistance, Michael escaped to New Mexico but was eventually caught by the police. After serving a short prison sentence, Michael was released. Despite Michael's past actions, KCI remained devoted to him. The couple moved in together, and Michael became a stepfather to Cameron and Preston. Eventually, in 2017, around Halloween, Michael and KCI got married, and started a new life together in a 2-bedroom trailer. Although the space is small, the affordable rent makes them feel grateful to have found a place where they can be together. In the same year, they welcomed their first child, Mercalli, followed by Ayana the next year. As their family grew to 4 children, Michael took on a job as a construction laborer to support them financially, while KCI dedicated herself to being a homemaker. She took great joy in every stage of her children's development and sought ways to capture those special moments. This led her to create a YouTube channel where she shared milestones of their family life. At first glance, their life seemed perfect, with Michael appearing calm and KCI's laughter frequently punctuating their videos. However, their relationship was not as it seemed. Behind closed doors, the couple frequently argued, and their disagreements had become a persistent problem. KCI's distrust of Michael led her to regularly check his phone, and she became suspicious whenever Michael worked late hours. A heated argument broke out between them on the night of July 10, 2019, while their children slept. The argument started when KCI discovered a message on Michael's phone that made her believe he was being adultery. The confrontation quickly turned violent, with KCI grabbing a baseball bat and pushing Michael. Michael then took the bat from her and, in a state of blind fury, he repeatedly struck her until she died. Michael put KCI's body in a plastic bag and hid it in a closet. He tried to clean up the scene as much as he could. The next morning, he took steps to prevent the children from finding out what happened. He then put KCI's body in his car. To avoid raising suspicion, Michael continued to post on KCI's social media accounts in the following days. On July 26, Michael sent a text to Richard, pretending to be KCI, asking him to take care of Preston and Cameron. Michael also texted KCI's mother, asking her to care for Mercalli and Ayana. When Richard arrived to pick up Preston and Cameron, he found it strange that KCI was not there and expressed his concerns to Michael. However, Michael dismissed Richard's concerns, saying KCI had left town for a few days. KCI's mother had a similar reaction when she came to pick up Mercalli and Ayana. Later that day, Michael called Sarah and told her that he and KCI were separating, and he needed to take care of the children while she worked. He then picked up the children and took them to his home. During the drive, the children noticed a strong, unpleasant smell in the car, similar to rotting meat. Michael continued to visit his children at Sarah's residence for 2 weeks, driving back and forth between his home and Sarah. Meanwhile, the body of KCI remained hidden in his car. As the days went by without hearing from her daughter, KCI's mother grew increasingly worried. On August 10th, Richard returned Cameron and Preston to Michael. This time, KCI's absence was even more noticeable, and it increased Michael's concern. During their brief conversation, Michael apologized for causing Richard and KCI to divorce, and acknowledged the challenges Richard went through in his relationship with KCI. As the new school year approached, Michael realized that the absence of the children and KCI would likely raise suspicions among the elementary school staff. This realization led to a tragic turn of events. On a night that remains unspecified, Michael took Cameron out of bed and suffocated him, then placed his body in a suitcase. The next morning, he did the same to Preston, putting his body in a garbage bag. A few days later, the owner of the trailer park where Michael lived served him an eviction notice, giving him 2 weeks to vacate the premises. Amidst this dire situation, Michael went to pick up Mercalli and Ayana. When KCI's mother saw Michael again without KCI, she became overwhelmed with anxiety and had a nervous breakdown. Her mind was consumed by a single question: where was her daughter? Michael was driving with his daughters, Mercalli and Ayana, when he was suddenly overcome with guilt. He felt trapped and decided to turn himself in at the police station. However, when he reached the door, he changed his mind and turned back home. Upon returning, he filled the bathtub with water and tragically drowned his daughters. After their deaths, He placed their bodies in a plastic container. As Hurricane Orion approached Florida in early September, a state of emergency was declared, prompting many people to seek shelter. Michael took advantage of the chaos to transport 5 bodies, including his wife and children. He loaded them into his truck and headed north to stay with Sarah. During his stay, Sarah noticed that Michael never contacted KCI or inquired about the children, which made her uneasy. However, she chose not to ask questions due to her awareness of the marital issues. After the hurricane passed, Michael's neighbors reported a strong, unpleasant smell coming from the trailer to the property owner. The owner checked the trailer, first looking through the windows and then entering it. Although the furniture and personal belongings were still there, the smell was overwhelming, but nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. KCI's mother grew desperate as she tried to make sense of her daughter's disappearance. She suspected Michael might be in trouble with the law and hiding, which could explain why her daughter was also in hiding for her own safety. Rather than waiting, KCI's mother contacted the sheriff's office and requested a welfare check at Michael's house. When officers arrived for the welfare check, they found the house empty but appeared to have been recently cleaned. However, a strong smell of decomposition lingered, contradicting the presence of cleaning supplies near the entrance. Before the officers could investigate further, the property owner arrived and asked them to leave. Meanwhile, with the bodies still in his vehicle, Michael drove out of state into Georgia. He stopped near a wooded area and disposed of the bodies of Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Ayanna. As he continued driving and checked his GPS, Michael lost control of the vehicle and crashed. Although Michael escaped without injury, the vehicle was severely damaged. The police quickly arrived at the scene of the accident and were immediately hit with the strong, terrible odor coming from the wrecked truck. They find a suitcase in Michael's truck, and when they open it, they discovered KCI's gruesome body. Michael broke down and confessed to his heinous crimes on the roadside. He also revealed the location of the children, leading to his immediate arrest. KCI's family was devastated by the news, feeling as though their world had shattered. In shock and grief, they still do not understand why Michael could have so brutally murdered his wife and children. Sarah, in particular, felt an intense hatred towards Michael, a sentiment she had never experienced before. With a search warrant and new evidence in hand, investigators went back to KCI's house. Upon entering, they were met with a strong, unpleasant odor and a noticeable reddish stain on the carpet. The agents began collecting evidence from the scene, while the autopsies were being performed to gather more information about the tragic incident. Forensic results showed that Cameron sustained a fractured jaw with no other visible signs of trauma. But a towel was in his mouth. Preston was found with a noose around his neck. Mercalli and Ayanna were found in a small plastic bag together, which also contained a baby bottle with Ayanna's name on it and a pair of pink sandals. The cause of death for Mercalli and Ayanna was determined to be drowning. KCI's autopsy results showed a severe blunt force injury to the front of her skull and face, but no other signs of trauma were found on her body. When questioned by authorities, Michael remained calm and provided precise and honest answers. Michael even thanked the police officers who arrested him and said he felt he had no other choice. Michael provided a clear and chronological account of incident from the fight with KCI to his subsequent arrest. When asked about his motives, Michael said that his actions stemmed from the harsh life circumstances he endured, which led him to believe that his decision was the only possible solution. The tragedy profoundly affected everyone involved, but it was particularly shattering for Sarah. She found it extremely difficult to accept that her children had been exposed to and had lived with someone like Michael. As a result, Sarah struggled with mental health issues after learning the truth. Michael was subsequently charged with second-degree murder for KCI's death and 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder for the deaths of the children. Michael pleaded guilty to the charges, bypassing a trial and moving directly to the sentencing phase. A 12-person jury then had to decide between two sentences: life imprisonment or the death penalty. The defense strategy focused on Michael's difficult childhood and mental health issues, highlighting various psychological disorders that may justify a reduced sentence. However, state prosecutors argued that the extreme brutality of the case worthy a death penalty. In January 2023, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty, as required by state law. After a brief 99-minute hearing, the judge formally sentenced Michael to death. He also received a separate sentence of life imprisonment without parole for the murder of KCI. Michael's lawyer quickly filed an appeal following the sentencing. However, on April 28, 2023, the judge rejected the appeal and confirmed the original sentence. Prosecutors were pleased that justice had been achieved for KCI's family. Michael is still in prison, awaiting his scheduled execution. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Kate Waring. Kate Waring was born in Charleston, South Carolina, USA. She grew up in a loving family with two siblings, and her parents always tried their best to give their children the best life possible. As a child, Kate showed a deep love and compassion for animals, which led her to start volunteering at various animal shelters at a young age. As a teenager, she was a dancer and had a wide social circle, known for her positive attitude and outlook on life. Everyone assumed she had an educational good background, and to some extent, this was true. However, one fateful day, her life changed completely. Just before going to college, Kate opened up to her parents about being abused by someone close to the family when she was younger. Kate's parents were shocked by this confession. They felt guilty for not knowing the hardships their daughter had faced over the years. After learning this heartbreaking truth about their daughter, Kate's parents did everything they could to help her overcome it, but unfortunately, this traumatic experience left behind long-lasting consequences that became increasingly serious over time. Kate had struggled with addiction to both alcohol and illegal substances. Kate's parents recommended therapy to help her work through her issues, and she agreed to give it a try. They also suggested she move back in with them, thinking the family environment would aid in her recovery. Initially, the therapy seemed effective, but Kate continued to grapple with the emotional weight of her past, making it difficult for her to move forward. Kate's life underwent a major transformation when her psychiatrist diagnosed her with depression. Her father proposed a trip to anywhere in the world, which Kate eagerly accepted. She chose to travel to the Arctic Circle, driven by her long-held desire to see polar bears. Kate and her parents searched for suitable tours and eventually booked a trip. As the journey approached, Kate's parents noticed a marked change in her attitude, shifting from sadness to cheerful and positive. During the trip, Kate and her parents shared a wonderful experience, filled with joy and laughter. On the boat to the Arctic Circle, Kate met a fellow Russian tourist. They kept in touch throughout the trip, and when the trip ended, they still exchanged letters. Kate developed strong feelings for him, and eventually, which led her to make the decision to travel to Russia. Kate had finally begun to overcome her depression after traveling with her family in another country. However, due to visa issues, she was forced to return home. Despite this incident, Kate seems to have found joy in her life again. She planned to resolve her visa problems and had even started writing a book for her children. But everything changed on Saturday, June 12, 2009. Kate's family was away on a business trip, and she was alone at home. Normally, Kate would call her father to check in, but this time she didn't. Her father tried to reach her, but there was no answer. Concerned about her well-being, especially given her past struggles with addiction, her father asked someone to check on her. When the person arrived at Kate's home, they found her room empty, but the light was still on, suggesting that she had just stepped out and would return soon. However, Kate's medication, which she needed to take regularly, was still at home. Her parents were anxious, but they decided not to panic, thinking that Kate, being 28 years old, was capable of taking care of herself. They decided to wait until Monday, at which point her parents intended to contact the police. On Monday morning, Kate's father received a call from the bank. A bank employee informed him that someone had tried to cash a check for over $4,000 from Kate's account. The bank was unable to contact Kate, so they reached out to her father. This situation raised suspicions, as Kate's father knew she only had a few $100s in her account. The bank security team contacted Kate's father due to the large amount of the check. Although Kate's signature on the check appeared to be genuine, the bank still had concerns. The man who tried to cash the check was identified as Ethan Mack. Kate's father did not recognize Ethan's name, but he assumed Ethan might be an acquaintance of Kate's since the bank had verified her signature. As Kate was still unreachable, her father decided to contact the police. The police launched an investigation into Kate's disappearance and began by questioning Ethan Mack. Ethan claimed to have known Kate for years and stated that she had written the check to pay off old debts. He also claimed that he had frequently lent Kate money for various purchases, including clothing and jewelry. Investigations into Kate's disappearance led detectives to speak with her friends. They revealed that Kate had a long-standing friendship with Ethan. Although they were very close, her friends insisted that the relationship was not love. Ethan told detectives that he met Kate on Friday night and took her out for dinner at a restaurant. After dinner, he drove her home and then went about his own business. To support his alibi, Ethan showed detectives text messages he had exchanged with Kate, confirming their dinner plans. He also allowed detectives to search his home, where he lived with his mother, but nothing suspicious was found. However, the police still suspect his connection with the check and did not rule Ethan out as list of suspects. Detectives reconstructed Kate's activities on Friday night to determine her last whereabouts before she disappeared. She had seen her therapist in the afternoon and then visited the gym. Later, Kate entered a store and purchased a bottle of wine. Security footage showed her talking on the phone at the time, and it is possible that she was speaking with Ethan, who later picked her up and took her to dinner. Kate's parents remembered another unsettling detail from the day she went missing. Although she mentioned having some problems, she didn't specify what they were. Unfortunately, her parents did not remember this conversation until a few days later, and by then, the information was too late to be of any help in the search. As the weeks went by, Kate remained missing. Her parents felt frustrated with the police, believing they weren't doing enough to find Kate. However, in August, the case gained new information when a team of former police officers, led by lawyer Andy Savage, took it on. This team had been privately investigating unsolved cases and was particularly drawn to Kate's. The team consisted of 5 individuals, and all have significant experience in the investigative field. One of them, former Detective James Randall, began by examining Kate's bedroom. He noticed 2 suspicious things. Firstly, he found a packet of medication that Kate took regularly. Kate's parents confirmed that she was very diligent in taking her medication, so the fact that the packet was left behind was highly alarming. Next, a team member found Chinese currency on Kate's bed, which raised questions since Kate's parents had no idea where she got it or why she needed it. To gather more information, the team brought in Bobby Mitter, an expert in tracking individuals online. His skills are really useful. Bobby discovered that on the night Kate disappeared, she called her friend James around 10 p.m. but he didn't answer. Kate left a disturbing voicemail, saying someone had stolen her credit cards. Kate's phone was last active at 1:53 a.m. for some unknown reason, when she called her own voicemail. Further investigation by member Lewis revealed that the call was made from James Island, just a few kilometers from Kate's house. Another team member, Eugene Fraser, spoke with acquaintances on James Island and found something suspicious. Ethan Mack, who had allowed police to search his mother's home, didn't actually live there. Instead, he rented an apartment in a nearby building. Eugene's acquaintance, who happened to be Ethan's landlord, provided this crucial information. The detectives dug deeper and discovered that the police had not Ethan thoroughly investigated. They had only done a cursory search of his mother's house. The team decided to take matters into their own hands and began their own investigation. In the process, they found out that Ethan had a girlfriend named Heather Camp. When they asked Kate's parents about Heather, her mother remembered a strange encounter. About a month before Kate's disappearance, Kate had met Heather on a train from Washington, D.C., where Kate was experiencing visa issues to Russia. Heather had told Kate that she had been robbed of her wallet and was now destitute. Kate offered to help and lent her a substantial amount of money. Heather said she has found a job as a pediatric surgeon in South Carolina and will start work soon. Heather later said that her daughter had tragically died in a car accident in New Jersey. Her actions following this announcement seemed irrational and confusing. She did not go there, and her demeanor suggested that her daughter's death did not affect her greatly. Furthermore, they discovered that Heather was facing fraud charges in Indiana. She had impersonated a licensed physician by falsifying paperwork. The team gathered significant data, forcing them to re-examine the case from a new perspective. However, when they presented their findings to the police were completely reluctant to continue the investigation. The team discovered that the only way to get the police to take action was to gather undeniable proof that connected Heather to Kate's disappearance. To obtain this evidence, the team took drastic measures. They convinced the person who rented an apartment to Ethan Mack to install a hidden camera outside his apartment door. Additionally, they placed a GPS tracker in Ethan's car, allowing them to monitor his movements. Their efforts soon paid off. After analyzing Ethan's travel patterns, the detectives discovered that he had visited multiple pawn shops throughout the city. They followed his trail and found that at each shop, Ethan was selling small batches of jewelry. Although they couldn't confirm whether the jewelry belonged to Kate, the detectives felt they were closing in on a crucial lead. The group then hits a major roadblock when Ethan and Heather's landlord threatens to evict them because they haven't paid their rent. This made the detectives' investigation difficult, as losing access to the apartment would hinder their ability to monitor Ethan and Heather's activities. To address this issue, the detectives devised a plan to persuade the landlord to grant Ethan and Heather an extension on their rent payment. In exchange, the landlord required both Ethan and Heather to sign a contract committing to pay the outstanding debt. The team successfully negotiated this arrangement, and once the contract was signed, they immediately sent it to the laboratory for analysis. The primary objective was to compare the handwriting on the contract with Kate's signature on the $4,000 check. The results yielded a significant breakthrough. The handwriting expert confirmed, with absolute certainty, that the signature on the check matched Heather's handwriting on the contract. The team discovered that Heather had forged Kate's signature. However, they knew the police would be uncooperative, so they devised a new plan. They convinced the landlord to help them by telling Ethan that the apartment needed insect treatment. The team leader, dressed as an exterminator, accompanied the landlord to the apartment. But their plan almost failed. They realized Ethan only moved the car away from the house and did not actually leave. Upon entering the apartment, the investigator and the landlord were met with an unexpected surprise. Ethan was still at home, and Heather was the one driving his car. The investigator then had to think quickly and adjust his plan. They insist that the apartment needs to be disinfected and ask Ethan to wait outside while they spray the dangerous disinfectant. Ethan, unaware of the investigation, agreed to leave his apartment. Meanwhile, investigators begin searching for evidence to prove Ethan's involvement in Kate's disappearance. They found Ethan's backpack and examined its contents. Discovering Chinese money, it resembles the bills found on Kate's bed. However, the search yielded no other significant clues. The investigator and the landlord pretended to complete their task and left. The team needed a new strategy. After reviewing the footage from the camera outside Ethan's apartment, they noticed a man frequently entering the building, Terry Williams, a neighbor of the couple. The detective suspected that Terry might have information about Ethan and Heather's involvement in Kate's disappearance. The team decided to take a risk and offered Terry a substantial sum of money in exchange for his cooperation. They visited Terry's apartment with the offer, hoping he would reveal what he knew about Kate's disappearance. Detectives encountered an unexpected situation when they told Terry what was happening. Unbeknownst to them, Heather was at her home and overheard the conversation between the detectives and Terry. When the detectives started talking to Terry, Heather was extremely frightened. She immediately called Ethan and explained the situation in a hysterical state. The investigation team did not expect this, and they spent the next few days coming up with another plan. However, Terry later contacted the detectives and invited them to his home to discuss. Upon arriving at Terry's apartment, he reveals that although Ethan and Heather did not directly tell him about their involvement in Kate's disappearance, but he had suspected that the couple had done something wrong to Kate. Terry then produced an iPod that Heather had given him shortly after Kate's disappearance. He had assumed the iPod belonged to Kate. The detectives examined the device and, using its serial number, confirmed that it indeed belonged to Kate. This discovery provided the investigation team with sufficient evidence to return to the police department. The local police could no longer ignore the case and decided to take action. After reviewing the evidence gathered by the team, they arrested Ethan and Heather. During the initial interrogation, Heather agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. She claimed Kate's body was on Watala Island, approximately 20 miles from her house. However, when the police searched the area, they found no of Kate's body. It became clear that Heather had given them false information. Andy Savage then tried a different approach, suspecting Heather's direct involvement in Kate's murder. He met with her and offered a deal. In exchange for revealing Kate's body location, he would help get her off the forgery charges papers. Heather, seeing this as her only chance, agreed to the deal. She provided a detailed description of the location on the outskirts of Watala Island, claiming Kate's body was still there. The detectives decided to search the area without police accompaniment, but they were initially disappointed when they found nothing. However, they returned the next day, and they eventually discovered Kate's body. The forensic doctors were unable to determine the cause of Kate's death. But the truth eventually came to light when Heather began to confess. In August 2009, Heather signed a confession admitting to murder, obstruction of justice, and bank check forgery. The police investigation revealed that Heather had been committing fraud for years and had targeted Kate as her next victim during a trip from Washington. Heather later met Ethan and started a romantic relationship with him. Ethan, however, did not immediately plead guilty, and his trial began in October 2010. The prosecution used Heather's testimony to reconstruct the incident surrounding Kate's disappearance. According to Heather's account, on the day Kate vanished, Kate discovered that Heather had deceived her and stolen her credit cards. Kate threatened to inform her father. Heather confided in Ethan, who chose to support her despite his long-standing friendship with Kate. The investigation revealed that Kate was not alone with Ethan on the night she disappeared. Heather was also present. It appears that Heather and Ethan attempted to negotiate with Kate at a restaurant, trying to persuade Kate not to expose Heather's deception. During this meeting, Heather may have promised Kate that when she got to Ethan's apartment, Heather would return the stolen credit card to her. Upon Kate's arrival, Heather and Ethan may have been waiting for the right moment to end her life. However, the court ultimately questioned Heather's account of the incident and found her guilty, sentencing her to 39 years in prison. Ethan received a slightly more lenient sentence of 25 years. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shelby Erin Vaughn Holt. Shelby Erin Vaughn Holt was born on September 7, 2000, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, United States. She was the second of 5 children in her family, which included her mother, Shauna Hartman, father Toby Vaughn Holt, older sister Peyton Hartman, and younger siblings Davin Vaughn Holt and Isaac Vaughn Holt. Shelby graduated from Troy Center High School in 2018 and then spent 2 years trying different jobs, including working at a steakhouse, as she searched for her ideal career. She seems interested in pursuing a career in the therapeutic field, but has not yet made a final decision on her area of expertise. At 20 years old, Shelby was living life to the fullest. Her cheerful personality made her a beloved presence at social gatherings, and she loved to dance, sing, and spend time with friends. Besides, Shelby is active on Facebook, where she frequently shares photos of happy moments, many of which feature her young niece Camilla, who is the daughter of Peyton's sister. According to her mother, Shelby met Valerie Rose Hardick, a 22-year-old woman, on Facebook. Little is known about Valerie's life, but rumors suggest she had a difficult childhood, was involved with questionable people, and may have struggled with mental health issues. On June 20, 2021, at 6:48 p.m., Shelby called 911 and reported being injured. She stated that Valerie had shot her. Shortly after the call, police officers from the Fort Wayne Police Department arrived at Shelby's residence. Upon entering the house, they found Shelby severely injured, barely conscious, and she suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. A large pool of blood surrounded her. While one officer stayed with Shelby to provide assistance, the others searched the house to ensure no one else was injured and that the shooter was not still inside. While waiting for the ambulance local to arrive, the officers on the scene provided first aid to Shelby. A surgeon asked Shelby if she knew who had shot her, and she identified the perpetrator as Valerie. Emergency medical personnel soon took over Shelby's care, transporting her to a nearby hospital. She was in critical condition but remained conscious and alive. Shelby's family was notified of the incident, and the Fort Wayne Police Department began collecting evidence from her home. A key piece of evidence was discovered on a doorbell camera, which allowed authorities to identify a suspect after reviewing the footage. Police are appealing to the public for any information relating to the case. The following day, an unusual incident occurred in Ohio, about 50 kilometers away. Local police received calls about a suspicious woman lingering around a gas station convenience store around 10:30 in the morning. Eyewitnesses reported that the woman had been inside the store and around the gas pumps for about an hour, seemingly trying to see the credit card numbers of customers as they made their purchases. Police received a call from a man who reported encountering the woman at the convenience store. According the woman had pointed a gun at his back. Following this report, police officers arrived at the gas station with caution, where they found the woman still present. She was arrested without any violent incidents occurring. The woman, identified as 22-year-old Valerie Rose Hardick, was found to be in possession of a 9mm handgun that matched the one used in the assault on Shelby. Shelby's previous statement identifying her attacker as Valerie, coupled with this new evidence, further solidifies that Valerie was the perpetrator. Furthermore, Valerie's car matched the one captured by House Shelby's doorbell camera, which was seen leaving the scene moments before Shelby made her emergency call. Valerie was arrested and taken to the county correctional facility, where she awaited her court hearing, despite the ongoing investigation. At the same time, Shelby was fighting for her life after being shot with a 9mm gun. Shelby suffered severe injuries to her chest and abdomen. To help her recover, doctors put her in a medically induced coma and did everything they could to save her. Unfortunately, 3 days after the violent attack on June 22, 2021, Shelby's body could not recover from the injuries, and she passed away. According to Shelby's mother, her daughter died after undergoing 4 complex surgeries on her abdomen that were unsuccessful. Shelby also received 20 blood transfusions, but her medical outlook was always poor. Even if she had survived, doctors believed that Shelby would have needed to have her legs amputated. Many questions remain about what motivated Valerie, a 22-year-old woman, to kill Shelby in such a brutal manner. Investigators suggested that jealousy was the motive. It was alleged that Shelby was in a relationship with a man to whom Valerie had strong feelings. Valerie was arrested and charged with 2 separate crimes: criminal assault and making aggravated threats. In the initial case, she was held in Ohio on $100,000 bail for allegedly threatening someone with a gun at a gas station. Later, she was transferred to Allen County to face murder charges in connection with the death of Shelby. A private funeral ceremony was held for Shelby on June 29, 2021, and her remains were cremated afterward. As the murder trial progressed, Valerie Rose Hardick entered a plea agreement in early 2022. She pleaded guilty to murdering Shelby, attributing her actions to mental illness. A sentencing hearing is then set for September 2022 in Allen County Superior Court. During the hearing, Valerie pleaded guilty but mentally ill, as agreed upon in the plea deal. Her defense attorney presented mitigating circumstances, including her difficult childhood, affected by the loss of his stepmother, abuse by his half-brother, and mental health problems. Prosecutors stressed that jealousy was the insignificant motive behind Valerie's decision to kill Shelby. They also highlighted Valerie's extensive criminal history, which had worsened over time. Notably, Valerie was on probation and part of an alternative program due to prior charges when she murdered Shelby. During the hearing, Valerie exhibited unpredictable behavior, appearing composed and aware at times, while at other moments she seemed anxious, distracted, and even smiled at Shelby's family. However, she answered the court's questions accurately. However, Valerie never expressed remorse or apologized to Shelby's family. Shelby's parents were extremely sad and desperate because of the loss of their beloved child. Shelby's father recalled that his daughter had a strong affection for symbols that represented peace. He stated that Valerie seemed to take pride in admitting to the murder, showing no remorse for her crime. He also questioned whether jealousy was the only reason for the killing, he believing there must be more to the story. He vowed to continue seeking answers about the tragedy. He also expressed concern for Valerie's children, who would undoubtedly suffer as a result of their mother's actions. Shelby's father shared that he had forgiven Valerie to find peace of mind, inspired by his faith in God. He was confident that Shelby was with God and expressed his deep love for her. Shelby's mother, Shauna, remembers her daughter as a kind and thoughtful person who always went out of her way to help friends, no matter the distance. Shauna is haunted by memories of her dead daughter and struggles with guilt and helplessness for not being able to keep her safe. Shauna acknowledged Shelby's bravery in naming her attacker twice and continuing to fight for her life after the assault. Shauna described Shelby's severe injuries, including a racing heart that her body couldn't sustain. Despite incurring nearly $500,000 in medical expenses, Shauna didn't seek compensation, as these were waived upon Shelby's death. The funeral expenses were around $115,000, but Shauna didn't want any money from Valerie. Shelby's mother, Shauna, fought back tears as she shared that all she had left were memories of her daughter. She expressed a wish to trade places with her child, revealing that the pain of her loss was so overwhelming on some days that she couldn't even get out of bed. The court had heard from the lawyers and Shelby's family, and now it was waiting for the judge's decision. Under Indiana law, the possible sentence ranged from 45 to 65 years, with an average of 55 years. Valerie's defense team asked for the minimum sentence, pointing out various factors that they believed should be taken into consideration. In contrast, the prosecution argued for the maximum sentence. Before making his decision, the judge stated that it was clear the murder was planned and that Valerie knew exactly what she was doing when she committed the crime, as evidenced by her attempt to flee to Ohio. The judge acknowledged that Valerie had faced significant difficulty in her life, including inadequate education, personal trauma, and mental health issues. Despite having a traumatic past, it was not accepted as a justification for her behavior. As a result, the judge sentenced Valerie to the maximum 65-year prison term. The judge also ordered the destruction of the murder weapon. Valerie is currently serving her sentence at the Indiana Women's Prison, with the earliest possible release date being June 18, 2087, when she will be 72 years old, according to the American Correctional System's records. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Soni Millbrook. Soni Millbrook was born on February 15, 1981, in Memphis, Tennessee, USA. She is the daughter of Christine Millbrook Bennett and grew up in a large family with many siblings, having 2 sisters and 3 brothers. This warm and close-knit environment helped her build a special relationship with her cousin Jenny during her teenage years. Soni became a popular student at her high school. In 1998, when she was 17 years old and in the 11th grade, she met a man named Lakeith Moody, who was older than her. She soon began a relationship with him. However, the relationship was not a happy one, as Lakeith was abusive and violent, leaving visible injuries on Soni's body. Despite this, they had 4 children, 3 girls and a boy named after his father. In 1999, Soni's mother discovered a bruise on Soni's chest. When her mother asked her about it, Soni cried and confessed that Lakeith had caused the injury. A friend of Soni's also witnessed the injury, but Soni refused to report Lakeith's behavior to the police. Lakeith often controlled Soni and tried to isolate her from her friends and family. That same year, Soni moved into an apartment in the Fraser neighborhood of Memphis. One day, the management informed her of an incident at her apartment. When she arrived, she found a chaotic scene: damaged furniture, missing clothes, a destroyed television, food smeared on the walls, and personal hygiene products scattered everywhere, including under the stairs. Strangely, the mirror had the words, "Kiki loves you," with Kiki being Lakeith's nickname. Lakeith's behavior made Soni's relatives even more concerned. On October 31, 2000, Soni and her cousin, Pamela, went to a bar called The Mirage with Lakeith. While at the bar, Lakeith became aggressive towards Soni by slapping her and throwing a drink in her face. After the incident, Soni and Pamela left the bar and got into their car. According to Pamela, Soni was shaken and frightened by Lakeith's actions. Soni asked Pamela to take her home immediately because she was afraid that Lakeith would come after them. When Soni got home, she locked the door securely. An hour later, Lakeith came to the house, yelling and banging on the door. Pamela had to threaten to call the police to make Lakeith leave. Once Soni calmed down, her cousin decided to leave her alone. However, that evening, Pamela received a call informing her that Soni had been hospitalized. Lakeith had forced his way into the house, and when Soni tried to end the relationship, he attacked her. He tore off Soni's clothes and hit her on the head, face, chest, arms, and between her thighs. She suffered bruises all over her body, loose teeth, and even lost consciousness because Lakeith choked her until she passed out. Lakeith later accidentally discovered that Soni was on birth control pills, and he attacked her again. The next morning, Soni called Pamela and asked her cousin to take her to the hospital because of serious health problems. In late 2008, Soni, then 27, worked at a Christian institute. She was considered a reliable and punctual employee. Therefore, when she took time off or missed work, it was usually due to important reasons. Once, she called her supervisor to report that she could not come to work because her face was badly bruised and she did not want the children to see it. After she asked for a day off, Director Leslie approved it. However, when Sony returned a few days later, the bruises were so obvious that the director allowed her to wear sunglasses while working at the academy. Lakeith's violence not only affected Sony and their children but also caused concern in the community. In April 2008, Lakeith was found sitting in an SUV with a gun in his hand, despite being previously prohibited from owning a gun due to a criminal record. Furthermore, he had previously served 2 years in prison for burglary and 3 years in prison for drug possession with intent to distribute. Sony tried to avoid her boyfriend, but it was almost impossible. The situation came to a head on October 6, 2008. At that time, Sony did not arrive at the academy by 5 p.m. Her sister received a text message from Sony saying that Lakeith was holding her hostage in his home and had been beating her all day. Sony also provided her home address. Sony's sister called the police. 2 officers went to Sony's house. They knocked on the door, but there was no answer since it was locked from the inside. They then called the security department to unlock the door. When the police entered the house, they saw Sony's boyfriend jumping out of the back window of the apartment. Sony stood in the hallway, crying and unable to speak because of her grief. Her 4 children were also present, making for a very heartbreaking scene. Sony's face and neck were covered in bruises and scratches. When she calmed down, Sony explained what had happened. Sony and Lakeith began arguing, and he refused to let her leave the house. She told the police that Lakeith would not let her or the children near the window. She also said that Lakeith injured one of their children by grabbing the child and preventing her from taking the child to the hospital. Sony said that her boyfriend had been both physically and verbally abusive. During one altercation, he tied a baby blanket around her neck and choked her until she lost consciousness. When the police arrived, Lakeith threatened to choke her again and said he would kill her if the police did not let him go. The police searched the area but did not find Lakeith. Sony then left the house with the children in her car. 3 days later, she filed a restraining order against Lakeith, fearing for her life and wanting to prevent any contact with him. However, she missed the hearing, and the protective order was never granted. Nearly 6 months later, on March 10, 2009, Sony was still in contact with Lakeith. That day, he was supposed to pick up the children for a doctor's appointment, but instead, he began arguing with Sony, accusing her of having a new boyfriend. The argument quickly turned violent as he slapped her and pulled her hair. She tried to break free and ran out of the apartment while Lakeith screamed and threatened to kill her. Lakeith did not catch Sony but instead kidnapped their youngest child, an infant, and drove away at high speed. A police patrol alerted to the domestic disturbance arrived as Lakeith was running away. The officers attempted to stop him, but he escaped. In early 2010, Sony, 28, was studying at Southeast Tennessee Community College. She had to stay home to care for her 5th child, who was 9 weeks old, because of poor health. In January, Sony and the children moved into the Budget Lodge in Memphis. However, on the first day Sony moved in, she and Lakeith's arguments became so loud that motel staff had to intervene because they were disturbing other guests. Sony and Lakeith could not maintain a peaceful relationship. They argued constantly, disturbing neighbors and management with the noise. On January 22, a hotel security guard witnessed Lakeith in a very agitated state. He arrived at a high rate of speed in Sony's car and then began yelling at her as she stood on the second-floor balcony with the children. In his anger, he threw a bag of groceries at her. The security guard arrived and told Lakeith not to make any noise or throw things in the hotel. Lakeith was instructed to settle the argument in his room. However, Lakeith told the security guard that he did not need to worry about it. Lakeith then locked his car and accompanied the security guard to an unoccupied room on the third floor. The security guard asked Lakeith to hand over any hotel keys he had. Surprisingly, Lakeith had keys to 3 different rooms, even though he was not registered as a guest. The next day, Lakeith and Sony moved into room 222 with their children. However, the night manager asked Lakeith to leave that evening. Although Lakeith left as requested, he soon returned. The arguments between Sony and Lakeith continued for several more days until the guard asked Lakeith to leave the hotel for good. As Lakeith left, the front desk clerk tried to calm him down. The guard also warned Lakeith not to come back that night. Lakeith got into her car and drove away. Some time later, Sony spoke to Pamela and confided that she was having problems in her life. She was staying at the motel and wanted to talk to Pamela about something important. Sony said that she would call if she left the motel or if her boyfriend left first. The next day started normally. At 7 a.m., Sony took the younger children to daycare and the older children to school. Around 11 a.m., the housekeeping manager knocked on Sony's door and spoke to her through the window to inform her that they needed to pay the rent or they would have to leave. The manager returned several times that day. On a visit around 2:30 p.m., Lakeith answered the door. The room was dark. Lakeith told the manager that his mother was on her way to pick up the money. On January 27th, Sony did not pick up her older daughter on time. So the school secretary called the child's grandmother, Christine, to ask her to come pick up the girl. When Christine tried to contact Sony, she received no response. At around 6 p.m., she discovered that her other grandchildren were still at daycare. Concerned that she could not reach Sony, Christine asked her husband to pick up the younger children from daycare while she went to the school to find out what was wrong. They contacted the police and reported the incident at approximately 10:30 p.m. Later, on January 28th, the housekeeping manager re-entered room 222 and began taking inventory of the items that Sony and Lakeith had left behind. The room was filled with clothing in a large trash bag, which was then taken to a storage area. After the room was cleaned, it was ready for new guests. On January 29th, James and Rhonda Sargent moved into the room. They quickly noticed a foul odor and attempted to block it with incense, but were unable to eliminate it completely. They also discovered that previous tenants had attempted the same, as they found scented tissues in the tiles and ceiling vents. Because the smell was so strong that they reported it. On January 29th, officers from the Memphis Police Department's Missing Persons Unit visited the hotel to inquire about Sony's whereabouts, as that was where she was last seen. However, they did not enter room 222. Lakeith was arrested on February 2nd, around 7 p.m., while inside Sony's car at a shopping center. He was held for 48 hours on a charge of car theft. During questioning about Sony's disappearance, Lakeith said he last saw her on January 26th. He explained they had met in the hotel parking lot that morning after Sony had dropped off her children at school. They went into the room, had sex, and then returned outside. Lakeith then took Sony's car keys and left the hotel. He claimed Sony planned to use her welfare and student loan money to buy a new car, so he wasn't worried about keeping her car. Lakeith also said he had been living in the car since January 26th. However, investigators discovered that Lakeith had actually been staying at a different hotel. Additionally, given the snowy weather during that time, it was unlikely that he had spent the night in the car. On February 3rd, police found a debit card with Sony's name on it and several recent purchase receipts inside the car. That same day, police also searched the clothes stored at the hotel for DNA or other evidence, but found nothing. Due to the lack of evidence linking Lakeith to Sony's disappearance, he was released. Sony's cousin and her mother had to undertake the painful task of going to the hotel where Sony was staying to collect her belongings. At that time, Sony's cousin had a bad feeling but did not find any evidence. On February 4th, the police went to Sony's cousin's house and found a DVD player in Sony's wallet. Sony's cousin said they had received the items from Moody. According to the cousin, Lakeith borrowed the DVD player on January 24th under the pretext of watching a movie and drove a red car that day. When he saw Lakeith again a few days later, the cousin asked why Lakeith did not pick up the children on January 27th. But Lakeith evaded the question. When the cousin asked about Sony's whereabouts, Lakeith left the DVD player and wallet behind and left. Around that time, guests James and Rhonda Sargent requested to be moved out of room 222 because of the persistent odor. Since there were no other rooms available, they moved to another hotel. Later guests in room 222 also complained of a foul odor, despite the room being cleaned several times and the carpets being cleaned in early February. The odor persisted, only easing slightly over several days. On February 4th, homicide detectives arrived at the hotel to investigate. By this time, room 222 had been occupied and cleaned at least 3 times. As a result, the detectives were unable to enter the room to collect evidence. Instead, they asked hotel staff if they had noticed anything unusual. All staff responded that nothing was unusual. Then, on February 7th, James and Rhonda returned to the hotel and changed rooms 3 times. During one of the changes, they spent the night in room 222. While there, they informed management that the room still smelled unpleasant. To address this issue, in March, the hotel performed a more thorough cleaning of room 222. The staff cleaned the carpet, bedding, shower curtains, and window blinds. However, the results were shocking. The odor not only remained but became even more intense. The manager discussed the issue with the security guard. During the conversation, they recalled that the previous tenant, Sony, had disappeared at the end of January. The security guard recalled the events that occurred at that time and suggested that the manager check room 222 for traces of blood or cleaning agents. 10 minutes later, the manager returned and asked the guard to accompany him. What they found was horrifying. The 2 men entered the room where the manager had removed the mattress from one of the beds, leaving only the bed frame. The bottom of the bed frame had a cover. When they lifted the box spring, they discovered a large gap where anything could be hidden from view. Looking through the sturdy edges of the bed frame, they saw the unthinkable, a decomposing body. They called the police, who arrived at the scene shortly after. The bed frame was found to have many marks on it, and there were 2 pieces of broken wood near the headboard. A towel and a cloth bag were found between the legs of the body. The victim was wearing a shirt but nothing below the waist. The forensic team's autopsy determined that the cause of death was strangulation with a coaxial cable. The cable was wrapped around the neck, under one arm, around the chest, and ended behind the back. The medical examiner concluded that it would take at least 2 to 3 minutes of sustained pressure to cause death. In order to find the killer, the police collected items from between the victim's legs for analysis. The victim's shirt had an unidentified fingerprint. In addition, the scarf and the cloth bag did not belong to the victim. DNA samples that matched Sony's genetic profile, as well as that of a woman, were discovered. More remarkably, male DNA was also found on the cable, which led to the hypothesis that Sony had died at the time she was reported missing. The coaxial cable used in the case may have come from a DVD player that Lakeith borrowed from her cousin. Lakeith had been arrested by police for illegal possession of a weapon, and he was also the last person seen with Sony alive, making him a suspect in the case. He was in Sony's car when he was arrested and taken to the Mason detention facility. On March 18th, authorities launched an investigation into why the case unfolded in such a strange way. The chief of police said the victim's family deserved an explanation and acknowledged that the circumstances of the case were unprecedented, making it a shocking case of domestic violence. He also regretted that the room where Sony died had been cleaned and rented out multiple times, making it difficult for police to collect evidence. However, this explanation was met with skepticism. One of the first tenants, Rhonda, said the police should have been allowed into the room when James and Rhonda visited in January and would have found Sony sooner if they had noticed the smell of a decomposing body. Rhonda believes the police were slow in finding Sony. Following the loss, Sony's family held a funeral for her on March 24th. Sony's children were placed in the care of her sister on April 1st. They are currently trying to gain legal custody of the children. Sony's sister said that although the children were the primary victims, everyone in the family's lives was turned upside down by the loss. She pledged to take care of Sony's children, making sure they had enough food, clothes, and toys, and to keep them together as a family. She also said Sony had benefited from a social program, and she would continue to care for the children as her sister had. The card had been loaded with money before Sony went missing because she received an income tax refund. Police tracked the card's activity and found that it was in Lakeith's possession. During the surveillance, they noticed that the card was used on February 1st at a convenience store Sony usually visited to withdraw cash using her electronic welfare transfer card. Notably, this occurred 4 days after Sony went missing. Officers went to the store and requested the owner to show them the footage from their 16 security cameras. Through the footage, they observed that on the morning of February 1st, at 11:38 a.m., a man dressed in yellow conducted a transaction at the store. He used a Sony card to buy a bottle of orange juice, withdrew cash, and purchased a cigar. After making these purchases, he returned to a car driven by someone else. With all the evidence against him, Lakeith's trial began in the first week of February 2014, more than 4 years after the crime. By then, the Budget Lodge Hotel involved in the crime had closed. Lakeith did not admit his guilt. During the trial, the prosecutor portrayed the case as the tragic end of a tumultuous relationship. In contrast, Lakeith's defense attorney argued that there was insufficient evidence to establish his client's guilt. He pointed out that there were no witnesses or physical evidence to prove Lakeith's crime. The attorney also noted that the police found fingerprints on the victim's bed frame, but those fingerprints did not match Lakeith's. This suggests that someone else may have been involved in the crime. Additionally, the attorney argued that there was reason to suspect that the victim had had relationships with several other men over the years. He also emphasized that his client had never been convicted of domestic violence against the victim. Furthermore, he revealed something that the public did not know. Sony moved in with Lakeith again because she had to leave a relative's home due to a rat infestation. On February 6th, video footage showing Lakeith using a Sony prepaid card 4 days after her death was presented to the court. The defense claimed his calm demeanor throughout the transaction demonstrated his innocence, while the prosecution saw it as evidence of a cold and ruthless man with no regard for the crimes he was accused of committing. On February 7, 2014, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. On February 10, he appealed the conviction, arguing that the court had erred in considering his past acts of domestic violence and that the evidence was insufficient. On July 7, 2015, the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals upheld the convictions, affirming the decision. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Annie Lee. Annie Lee was born on July 3, 1985, in San Jose, California, to Vivian Van Lee and Hogan Lee, Vietnamese immigrants. As an only child, Annie demonstrated exceptional intelligence and talent from an early age, consistently excelling in her studies and being considered the top student in her school. Annie's favorite subjects were chemistry and biology. Her teachers believed she had a bright future in science, with some even predicting she might one day win a Nobel Prize. Throughout her school years, Annie actively participated in scientific conferences, where her work garnered various awards and recognition. As a high school student, she secured a $65,000 scholarship to study at any U.S. university. Annie chose the University of Rochester in New York, where she studied cellular development biology and medical anthropology. She later enrolled in Yale University's graduate school, working in a scientific laboratory and pursuing a doctoral degree in chemistry and biology. Annie's dissertation focused on the study of diseases caused by metabolic disorders. During her time working in the laboratory, she gained much research knowledge, which contributed to the treatment of diabetes and certain types of cancer. Annie, a student at the University of Rochester in New York, while pursuing her studies, met Jonathan Widowski, a fellow student and promising scientist. The two quickly dating, and their parents were pleased with their relationship. After graduating, Annie moved to New Haven, Connecticut, to attend Yale, while Jonathan chose to pursue his studies at Columbia University in New York. Despite the distance, the couple maintained their romance, visiting each other every weekend and making plans for their future. In the summer of 2009, Jonathan proposed to Annie with a beautiful diamond ring, and she happily accepted. They set their wedding date for Sunday, September 13, 2009. Initially, they only shared the news with their parents and close friends, keeping their colleagues in the dark. It wasn't until a week before the wedding, on September 6, that Annie sent out emails to friends and colleagues, announcing their upcoming marriage and a wedding invitation. The day after, the news spread rapidly throughout the department and the lab where Annie worked, becoming the most discussed topic. Annie and her fiancé had planned a wedding ceremony on Long Island, followed by a honeymoon at a luxurious resort in Greece. A few months before she went missing, Annie had written an article for the university publication, where she cautioned students about potential dangers and provided safety tips for when they were off campus. However, despite being aware of the risks, Annie herself fell victim to an unexpected tragedy at her workplace. On Tuesday, September 8, Annie left her university dormitory, where she shared a room with 3 friends, and headed to the University Medical Center laboratory, where she worked. The laboratory building, located on Amistad Street, has restricted access and requires a pass and special key card for entry and movement within the premises. A CCTV camera at the entrance captured Annie entering the building around 10 o'clock that morning. She went to her office, changed her clothes, stored her personal belongings, put on a medical coat, locked the door, and proceeded to the biolab. However, Annie never returned to her office that day and seemed to vanish in the corridors. Unfortunately, no one ever saw her alive again. On the evening Annie went missing, her dormitory neighbors were the first to discover the incident. They had grown accustomed to Annie's punctual nature, as she usually returned home at the same time every day. However, as midnight approached and she failed to return, her friends began to worry. Their concerns deepened when they were unable to reach Annie on her phone. Deciding to take action, they reported her disappearance to the police. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Annie's parents and fiancé had also been unable to contact her that night. Initially, they had assumed she was working late due to her heavy workload and would call them back when she was available. When the police arrived, they weren't too worried. They had heard what had happened and assumed that Annie was nervous before the wedding and needed time to calm down. However, their opinion quickly changed after examining Annie's office and reviewing the CCTV footage. They also tracked her movements within the building using her key card. The evidence revealed that Annie had entered the building in the morning but never exited. Her personal belongings, including her clothes, bag, wallet, and cell phone, were still in her office. Despite an extensive search, no sign of Annie was found, leaving behind only the unsettling feeling that she had vanished into thin. The disappearance of Annie Lee, a graduate student, led to an extensive investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Those who knew Annie personally described her as intelligent, kind, cheerful, and energetic, with no known enemies. Her family and fiancé anxiously waited for news, hope she will return safely. However, detectives were less optimistic, concluding that it was likely she was no longer alive. The laboratory building, crime scene, was placed under guard, and the list of suspects was narrowed down to staff and students with authorized access. The university atmosphere was tense because everyone realized that the killer might be somewhere nearby. Annie's fiancé, Jonathan, who had flown in from another state, was questioned but had a solid alibi. Despite this, he was visibly shaken and on the verge of a nervous breakdown, deeply concerned about Annie's disappearance. Among the suspects, one is Annie's teacher. On the day she disappeared, he canceled his lectures for unknown reasons and had no alibi. Although his was initially questioned, after the police still believed the perpetrator was likely someone from Yale University's laboratory, either a student, faculty member, or staff. A disturbing detect was found on September 12, providing the first evidence that Annie was no longer alive. A medical coat stained with blood was discovered hidden behind a false ceiling in an auxiliary room of a building. The coat did not belong to Annie, but further examination revealed that the blood on it was indeed hers. On September 13, the body Annie was found in a narrow pipeline on the technical floor of the laboratory. The day she was supposed to get married and leave for her honeymoon in Greece. Her petite stature and fragile build made it easier for her killer to stuff her body into the small space. A service dog's keen sense of smell helped the police locate Annie's body. The location where her body was hidden suggested that the killer was familiar with the laboratory's layout. It was a spot that was hard to access, making it a clever yet sinister choice for concealing the crime. Annie's body showed severe signs of trauma. Most of her ribs were broken, her limbs were damaged, and several teeth were knocked out. However, according to the pathologists, the cause of death was mechanical asphyxia, which meant that Annie was severely beaten and then strangled. A further examination revealed that Annie's clothes had traces of seminal fluid. But it was concluded that she had not been raped. A few days before Annie's body was discovered, police attention was initially drawn to Raymond J. Clark III, a young laboratory technician. Raymond claimed to have seen Annie leave the building without her belongings, implying she intended to return. However, his testimony aroused suspicion from the police. Following the discovery of Annie's body, Raymond became the primary suspect. They collected DNA samples from Raymond and asked him not to leave the country until the investigation was completed. On September 17, Raymond was arrested. Forensic examination results showed that his semen was found on Annie's clothes. And his robe, stained with Annie's blood, was discovered hidden in the suspended ceiling. Additionally, Raymond had suspicious bruises on his body, suggesting that Annie had fiercely defended herself before her death. Despite the incriminating evidence, Raymond denied any involvement in the crime. Further investigation showed that Raymond was a very hot-tempered person, easily angered and often had workplace conflicts. He frequently engaged in verbal altercations with colleagues and had a reputation for being cruel, having physically abused women he had relationships with in the past. Raymond did not excel academically, but he stood out as a promising athlete in school. He is known for his handsome looks and has a strong appeal to women. However, he was unable to get into university due to poor grades. Fortunately, with the help of some relatives, Raymond secured a job at a laboratory, starting as a janitor and eventually working his way up to become a technician. During this time, Raymond was in a relationship with a woman named Jessica Del Rocco. However, their relationship was tumultuous, and Jessica later testified against Raymond in court. She described him as controlling, stating that he would constantly monitor her activities, read her messages, and dictate what she could do and couldn't do. He would also become violent when they disagreed. And Jessica claimed that he would physically abuse her. After one particularly brutal incident, Jessica fled from Raymond. She temporarily relocated to another state to escape his abuse. Then Raymond had been in a relationship with Jennifer Radko, a Yale University student, for the past year. Jennifer ignored rumors about his alleged infidelity with students and lab employees. She accepted his marriage proposal, and they proceeding with wedding preparations. The motive behind the murder remains unclear, even after he fully admitted his guilt. He never revealed his motive, even after admitting to the crime. Initially, it was thought that the murder was related to a workplace conflict. Annie was conducting experiments on laboratory mice to study the effectiveness of enzymes in treating cancer, diabetes, and other diseases. Raymond, who considered the laboratory his domain, was in charge of the mice. Two theories emerged about the incident leading to the murder. The first theory suggests that Raymond might have had a conflict with Annie. On the day of the murder, Annie stayed late in the laboratory and entered the area where experimental animals were kept. Raymond, who had cleaned the area, go in there too. The confrontation could have intensified into a physical altercation, which in turn could have led to Annie being strangled by their Raymond a fit of rage. A second theory proposes that Raymond had feelings for Annie, but she rejected his advances. Raymond, unaccustomed to rejection, was hurt by her refusal. When he learned about her upcoming wedding on September 7th, Raymond was completely overcome by intense feelings of jealousy. The next day, when he was alone with Annie in the laboratory, he attacked her, beating and attempting to rape her, then ultimately strangling her. This theory explains the appearance of seminal fluid on Annie's clothes. The case gained widespread media attention from the start. The victim was a promising young scientist, and the crime was committed on campus. Raymond first appeared in court in Connecticut on October 6, 2009, where he denied any involvement in the murder and the charges against him. The hearing was postponed multiple times to allow for the collection of all evidence and materials. It was discovered that Raymond had spent at least an hour with Annie in the laboratory, during which the murder took place. In an attempt to mislead investigators, Raymond used his key card over 50 times at various locations, eventually making his way to the technical floor. There, he spent around 15 minutes hiding the body in the wall. Raymond then activated the fire alarm, which forced the staff to evacuate the building, providing him with an opportunity to blend in and avoid suspicion. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in the pocket of a robe found hidden under a false ceiling, a green ballpoint pen. Further examination revealed that Raymond had used this pen to sign his name in various work logs on the same day. Additionally, witnesses reported seeing Raymond scrubbing specific areas of the lab floor repeatedly over the next few days. Despite the floor appearing clean, he also disposed of the cleaning equipment and a pack of tissues with small brown stains, resembling blood splatters, in a trash can. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the tissues contained Annie's blood, indicating that Raymond had made a thorough attempt to eliminate any evidence. In February 2011, Clark agreed to a plea deal in exchange for a reduced sentence. At the court hearing on March 17, 2011, he pleaded guilty to murder and attempted rape and apologized to Tanny's parents and fiancé. However, Raymond never revealed the details of the incident leading up to the murder or his motivation for the crime. As a result, he was sentenced to 44 years in prison. Raymond is currently serving his sentence at the Cheshire Correctional Institution in New Haven County, Connecticut, and will not be eligible for release until September 2053. The parents and fiancé of Annie have expressed that they find the given sentence to be fair. At the sentencing, Annie's mother delivered a heartfelt speech. With tears in her eyes, she expressed that she would never get the opportunity to hold her daughter again, witness her marriage, hear her laughter, or enjoy the presence of her grandchildren. She said goodbye to her child, whom she cherished as the greatest gift from God. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Claire Bernal. Claire Bernal was born on August 18, 1983, in Groombridge, a small village on the border of Kent and East Sussex, England. She spent most of her childhood and teenage years there. Little is known about her parents. Claire was raised by her mother, Tricia Bernal. Her father, from whom her mother is divorced, was uninterested in Claire's upbringing and did not participate in her life. Claire was a sociable, cheerful, and open-minded girl. She attended St. Gregory's Catholic School, where she excelled academically, participated in dance, and developed a passion for fine arts. Later, she enrolled at Kent College, where she earned a bachelor's degree in science. Claire was a friendly and outgoing woman who easily became the center of attention in any group. She had many friends, and people always spoke highly of her. Despite her sociable nature, she was cautious and careful, avoiding bad habits and choosing her friends wisely. During her college years, she worked part-time as a makeup artist. This experience inspired her to pursue a career in the beauty industry. She completed specialized courses in cosmetology and makeup artistry, as well as learning the fundamentals of theatrical makeup. These skills led her to her dream job as a beauty and style consultant at the upscale store Knightsbridge, which had recently opened in the luxury department store Harvey Nichols. To take this job, Claire moved to London, because rent in the capital was quite high, so she lived with two friends. Despite being new to the industry, Claire quickly became a favorite with her colleagues. She was the most knowledgeable about makeup and skin care, so she took the time to mentor newbies. Claire describes herself as detail-oriented, patient, friendly, and kind. Claire loves living in the capital, where there are many opportunities to showcase her talents, learn new skills, and gain experience. During her first few months at Harvey Nichols, Claire met Michael Peake, a senior security guard who was immediately drawn to her. He showed his interest through various gestures and was good-looking. However, Michael has a complicated past. He is a citizen of both the Czech Republic and Slovakia. He was a former soldier who deserted and moved to England to avoid military service. Michael has a wife, whom he is in the process of divorcing, and a young child. Michael speaks with a very strong regional accent. He is tall and athletic, smiling and joking frequently. Michael began pursuing Claire. For about a month, they chatted happily and interacted mainly at the department store where they worked. When Michael asked Claire out on a date, she happily agreed. Their first date was at a quaint London cafe, where they spent the evening talking about their lives and sharing personal stories. During the conversation, Michael revealed that he was married but expressed his intention to divorce his wife soon because he wanted to be with Claire forever. This unexpected confession made Claire feel a little uncomfortable, but she thought that he was probably just joking. When Claire shared everything with her mother, she felt unhappy that the person pursuing her daughter was a foreigner, 8 years older than her and already had a family. Claire's mother Tricia advised her daughter not to meet this man. However, Claire felt safe and reassured her mother that everything was fine. On the second date, Michael took Claire to an amusement park, gave her a beautiful bouquet of flowers, complimented her repeatedly, kissed her goodbye and confessed his love. Claire was surprised and wondered if Michael was joking. That evening, she called her mother to express her concerns. Once again, her mother asked her to stop seeing him. Claire admitted that his behavior was a bit strange, but she admitted that she liked Michael and wanted to get to know him. So Michael asked her out on another date a week later, which she agreed to. This time Michael confessed his love again and told Claire that he would never let her go again. This left Claire confused, and even a little scared. She decided that this would be their last date and that she would end the relationship. Their short-lived affair lasted less than a month, during which they only went out 3 times. However, That was enough for Michael to believe that Claire was now his. Michael went back to the Czech Republic for a few weeks to see his wife and settle their divorce, but he was unable to resolve the issue. During this time, Claire almost completely stopped thinking about him, moving on with her life, believing that Michael was part of her past. However, one evening, he called her, asking to meet him at the airport. When Claire refused, he insisted that he needed her help. Claire finally agreed to meet him and even offered to let him stay for a day, since he had mentioned that he had moved out of his rented apartment and could not move into his new one until the next day. After entering Claire's house, Michael said that he wanted to stay and live with her. Claire was scared and asked him to leave immediately. However, Michael refused. Claire threatened to call the police if Michael did not leave. Although he eventually left the apartment, he did not leave and remained sitting on the doorstep until morning. The next day at work, Claire explains to Michael that their relationship is over and that their previous 3 dates meant nothing. However, Michael disagrees. Michael continued to prove his true feelings. He brought a large bouquet of red roses to Claire's workplace, but she refused to accept them. Michael persisted and took Claire home later, where he sat outside her apartment all night. When the neighbor tried to kick him out, Michael threatened to harm Claire instead of breaking up with her. Michael's actions and behavior are a desire to control Claire, despite Michael's assertions of love. Claire calmly explains that she has no feelings for him and regrets their short-lived relationship, to which Michael responds by hugging her tightly. He whispers in her ear, insisting that she loves him but does not yet realize it. For 6 months, Claire endured relentless stalking and harassment from Michael. Despite reporting her to the police, no action was taken. At work, Michael lurked outside her store, monitoring Claire's every move and contacting her dozens of times a day via phone calls and text messages. Michael would confess his undying love, beg for forgiveness, and beg her to come back. However, when his attempts were rebuffed, he would resort to threats, insisting that they would eventually be together. Every time Claire changed her phone number, Michael would find a way to get her number within a few days. What scared her the most was that Michael knew her home address and was always outside her house. Even when she tried to move, Michael followed her and found out her new address, causing the harassment to continue. Michael thought they were still in love. He even counted the months since they first met. In Michael's messages to Claire, he mentioned that if Claire didn't belong to him, he would make sure that no one else could have her. Claire had difficulty concentrating at work and was afraid to go out in public. Even the sound of the phone ringing startled her. Over time, the situation got worse and Claire began having nightmares at night. The emotional damage was evident as she lost a significant amount of weight. She felt tired and lost her confidence and her usual outgoing demeanor. Encouraged by her mother, friends, and co-workers, Claire finally decided to report her situation to her employer. She confided in the head of security at the mall. This man, who had experience in law enforcement, took Claire's concerns seriously and conducted a thorough investigation. He interviewed other employees and carefully reviewed the mall's surveillance footage, gathering evidence that showed that Claire was indeed being stalked by Michael. The security manager transferred Michael to another part of the store. However, this change did not significantly improve the situation. Michael continued to spend most of his time waiting outside the store, monitoring Claire's actions. Because Michael failed to perform his duties, the store management had to fire him. Despite this, Michael continued to harass Claire. Claire decided to report Michael to the police. When questioned by the police, Michael denied any wrongdoing, claiming that his intentions were sincere and that he only wanted to make it up to Claire so they could get back together. He insisted he had not threatened Claire, but his tone could have been misinterpreted. However, the police did not speak to Claire's colleagues and flatmates, who witnessed the incident and knew Michael had been stalking Claire for months and repeatedly threatening to kill her. The police treated the situation as a casual affair, finding no threat to Claire's life or health. The police did not conduct a risk assessment and Michael was only given a fine and a warning. He was also banned from the shopping center where she worked and ordered to stay away from her. A day after being questioned and notified of the ban on approaching Claire, Michael was back at her house, peering through the windows. When Claire saw him, she called the police. However, by the time the officers arrived, Michael had left the scene and they took no action against him. Claire continued to report her harassment by Michael to the police on June 10, 2005, saying that he had violated the no-contact order. However, when the police arrived, Michael was gone and no action was taken against him. Michael was eventually arrested. He cooperated with the police, surrendered calmly, and was handcuffed without resistance. After his arrest, he was charged with stalking and harassment. Michael spent a week in jail before being released on bail. The trial was scheduled for August 31, 2005, but before the trial, Claire decided to go on vacation. She went to a famous Italian resort with her mother and a friend, where they spent time enjoying the warm sea. The holiday was over. When she returned to London, she was surprised to find that Michael had stopped following her. He had disappeared. Feeling extremely relieved, she let down her guard. Michael returned to his hometown, where he spent every day at the shooting range, honing his shooting skills. He underwent training and obtained a license to purchase a pistol. Michael then brought the weapon into the UK with him and avoided all contact with Claire before their scheduled court hearing. During the hearing, he remained calm, pleading guilty and apologizing, claiming that he had no intention of causing harm. As a result, Michael was released again, without facing any real punishment. The next 2 weeks passed in silence, with Claire thinking that Michael would not bother her again. On September 13, 2005, Claire had a date with her new boyfriend that evening. She was in a good mood, chatting happily with a coworker, telling her about her plans when she heard a strange sound in the store from the entrance. Michael had been working as a security guard here for a long time, so he entered the building without being detected. Claire noticed something was wrong with her friend's expression, but before she could react, a shot was fired. Michael shot Claire point-blank in the back of the head, then fired 3 more bullets into her face as she fell to the floor. The gunshots caused widespread panic in the store, with people screaming, running, and looking for cover. Thinking that the shooter would come out of the lobby and start shooting randomly at customers, everyone prepared for the worst. Instead, Michael fired another shot into the ceiling, then pressed the barrel of the gun to his temple and pulled the trigger, instantly ending his life. Michael has been stalking Claire for almost a year, making her life miserable, and now he has brutally ended it. Michael has fulfilled his dark promise and cannot bear the thought of living without her. When paramedics and police arrived on the scene, they found the aftermath of that evening was devastating. Claire's mother, Tricia Bernal, had attended her sister's birthday party and returned home late. When she met police at the front door, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. She was told that her daughter Claire had been shot and killed. Tricia Bernal was shocked when she heard the news. Michael had asked a law student working at the department store about the potential punishment for the crime a few months earlier, which was then known to colleagues, including Claire. Claire reported her concerns to the police, fearing for her life, but no action was taken. The crime was largely due to police negligence, despite Claire's repeated pleas for help. Michael was arrested twice but released on bail, breaching a no-contact order, threatening Claire and consulting a lawyer about the punishment. However, the police felt this was not enough to jail him. He had the opportunity to leave the country, buy a weapon and return to commit the murder. There was crucial evidence, testimony from co-workers, roommates, and others who had heard Michael's threats against Claire, but this evidence was ignored by the police. It was only when Michael killed Claire and then committed suicide that the police realized the severity of the situation and the countless mistakes that had occurred. Claire's mother Tricia decided not to let this go and to seek justice. She joined forces with other grieving families who had lost loved ones in similar circumstances. Together, they launched a national program to help victims of stalking. As a result of their efforts, the law was changed and stalking was reclassified as a criminal offense. In 2012, a new law was passed that banned stalking completely. A helpline was also set up for victims who did not receive adequate support and protection from the police. Back, detectives, let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Jordan Worth. Alex Skeel was born on August 17, 1995 in Kingston upon Hull, into a warm and wealthy family. Alex Skeel also has a twin brother. The twins' health was not good when they were young because they were born prematurely. Despite these health challenges, Alex's intellectual development was not affected, and he was just like his peers. He was even able to actively participate in school sports. From a young age, his parents showered both sons with love and care, investing heavily in their education to give them a better life. After completing high school, both brothers enrolled at the prestigious Bedford College, where they continued their studies. Alex is smart, physically attractive and healthy thanks to his regular visits to the gym. He is quite shy, so he is hesitant to ask women out. In college, Alex met Jordan Worth, a young woman from a wealthy family. Jordan was very popular at college because of her fashion sense. At that time, many boys wanted to compete for her attention. Jordan also spends time volunteering, focusing on fundraising, organizing aid for local animal shelters and helping children in Africa facing famine. Her charitable efforts are contributions to a better world. Alex Skeel fell for Jordan immediately, drawn to her kindness, intelligence, and beauty. Although he thought someone so famous and talented would never notice him, Alex was surprised when Jordan took the initiative to get to know him. They began dating in 2012, when they were both 17. Jordan and Alex, they were called the cutest couple in college. The early stages of their relationship were filled with love, respect, and care for each other. They often showered each other with sweet gestures and exchanged gifts on important milestones. They were often seen smiling and hugging in photos, accompanied by heartfelt messages and declarations of love. To those around them, it seemed like they were destined to be together and begin their journey of lifelong happiness. Jordan and Alex quickly decided to move in together. As students, they relied heavily on the financial support of their parents, who accepted the couple's relationship. Alex's parents even liked Jordan, considering her a responsible and serious girl. Jordan planned to become a history teacher. She had a very good impression on those around her. However, over time, Jordan's behavior began to change. She became more and more controlling of Alex, and the situation got worse. Alex felt pressured to report her every move to Jordan. Jordan checked his personal correspondence, including his phone, emails, and social media, without hesitation. She often exploded in fits of jealousy, but Alex, being in love, tried to ignore this behavior. When Jordan began to choose his clothes, forcing him to wear only what she picked. Over time, Jordan continues to limit Alex's social life. She decides who he can and cannot spend time with, and when, ultimately controlling who he meets. As Alex's relationship with Jordan continued, connections with those around him began to break down. His family and childhood friends were cut off from him, but he seemed oblivious to the situation. Despite their seemingly perfect public image, Jordan was controlling Alex's interactions, deleting his phone contacts without his knowledge and blocking his loved ones. She also responded to messages on his behalf, often being rude and insulting. Jordan would delete chat histories, leaving Alex unaware of what he had said to others. As a result, people began to distance themselves from him. Alex's twin brother noticed that Jordan was preventing them from communicating with Alex. At the same time, their parents also noticed changes in Alex's behavior, causing them to become concerned. Alex began to pull away from his family and those close to him. He stopped visiting, even on holidays. When his mother tried to reach out, she was met with rudeness. On the rare occasions she managed to speak with him, she urged Alex to end his relationship, warning that it would not end well. However, Alex refused to listen and defended Jordan, insisting she cared for him and meant no harm. The family soon discovered that Alex's girlfriend was behaving in a controlling manner. Jordan had convinced him to drop out of college, quit sports, and get a job. She then controlled his income, spending it on herself and entertainment. Concerned about Alex, his parents tried to intervene and convince Alex to leave Jordan, but he refused to listen to their concerns. In 2013, during Jordan's 18th birthday celebration at a country hotel, Jordan's behavior became alarming. As night fell and the guests began to leave, she disappeared without a word. Alex frantically searched for her, and the next morning Jordan stumbled back to their room, heavily intoxicated. When Alex asked where she had been, Jordan attacked him with aggressive actions and words. 2 months later, at Alex's 18th birthday party, Jordan got into a fight in front of his family and friends. Jordan assaulted a 15-year-old neighbor girl who was an acquaintance of Alex's family and had been invited to the party. Jordan saw the woman's intimate behavior with Alex, and Jordan became angry and attacked the girl by pulling her hair and scratching her face. Although Jordan eventually calmed down, the incident exposed her true nature to everyone present. Alex's parents and brother advised him to end the relationship because of Jordan's aggressive and unreasonable behavior. Alex took their advice for the first time and admitted that Jordan had overreacted. Alex spoke to Jordan that night, telling her that he had decided not to move back into their apartment and would instead live with his parents. After the breakup, Alex continued his studies and continued working, gradually losing contact with Jordan. On New Year's Eve 2014, Jordan surprised Alex by calling to tell her she was pregnant. Alex was surprised and delighted. Jordan apologized for not sharing the news sooner, fearing that he would no longer want to see her. When Alex's parents learned that they were expecting a grandchild, they invited Jordan to move in with them. Jordan accepted their offer and moved in with them. Jordan and Alex eventually got married, and 3 months later, they welcomed a son named William. The young family was initially filled with happiness and contentment. For a short time, Jordan tried her best to please Alex and rekindle the flame of their love. However, when William, their son, was 6 months old, Jordan became pregnant again. As the due date approached, Jordan became increasingly irritable and demanding, insisting that they move out of his parents' house immediately. Attributing her behavior to hormonal changes, Alex finally gave in and rented a place for them in the city. In the summer of 2015, Alex and his wife Jordan welcomed their second child, a daughter named Alice. Alex was overjoyed and felt grateful for his family. However, after the move, Jordan's behavior changed and her controlling nature resurfaced. She forbade Alex from communicating with his family and prevented his parents from seeing their grandchildren. Despite this, she continued to accept financial help from them and would occasionally even ask Alex to request money from his parents. Within a few months of marriage, Jordan psychologically manipulated and dominated her husband, stripping him of his autonomy and subjecting him to her complete control. She frequently belittled and insulted him, gradually escalating the abuse. The situation began when they were renovating their house, and Jordan became increasingly dissatisfied with Alex's efforts. One day, Jordan became angry after Alex expressed his frustration. In a fit of rage, Jordan threw a hammer at Alex's head, causing a deep gash. As Alex clutched his wound in shock and struggled to stay conscious, he begged Jordan for help or to call an ambulance. However, Jordan responded with indifference, telling him to crawl away and die. Jordan then left Alex without help, going into another room to watch television. The next 3 years of Alex's life were marked by non-stop moral and physical suffering. Despite this, his deep-seated depression numbed him to the escalating threats and abuse he faced. He continued working to provide for his family, but his frustration and discontent with his wife grew. Alex endured humiliation at home, being forced to sleep on the floor without a bed, blanket, or pillow, and no longer allowed access to the kitchen. He was forced to eat leftovers, often leaving him hungry, as Jordan controlled his finances, taking all his money, preventing him from buying anything outside the house. Jordan also disrupted Alex's sleep. Whenever Alex fell asleep, she would brutally attack him, hitting him on the head, cutting him, or pouring boiling water on him. As a result, Alex would wake up in excruciating pain, often bleeding or burned. He would then treat and bandage his wounds with whatever he could find, while Jordan calmly returned to bed. Over time, Alex grew numb to this abuse, eventually losing the will to resist. Alex is facing a brutal life, but neighbors and acquaintances believe the couple had a happy marriage. Jordan presented a perfect image on social media by posting old photos with captions expressing her love for her husband and how lucky she was to have found each other. However, the shocking reality is that she violently attacked Alex, knocked out his teeth and cut his arm with a knife, leaving deep wounds. Furthermore, Alex suffered severe burns and was unable to seek medical help, forced to treat his injuries with makeshift items such as plastic wrap and adhesive tape at home. The couple's neighbors frequently heard screams coming from the house, prompting some to call the police out of concern. However, whenever this happened, Jordan would convince the officers that everything was fine and they would leave. During a subsequent police visit, one of the officers noticed that the husband, Alex, had a fresh wound with blood running down his arm. He also appeared malnourished and had various bruises on his face. When Jordan tried to explain that her husband had mental health issues and sometimes harmed himself, the officer was unconvinced. Instead, they called paramedics, and Alex was taken to the hospital. The doctors were extremely worried about Alex's condition when he was admitted to the hospital. He was almost lifeless, and the severity of the injuries, especially on his arms, Alex's body was severely burned, with second- and third-degree burns covering significant areas. His physical condition was extremely weak. Further examination revealed that the ligaments in Alex's shoulder were severely damaged, possibly due to repeated beatings. There was also a deep gash on his forearm, and the doctor found that Alex had lost several teeth and had multiple hematomas. At that moment, Jordan rushed into the hospital, insisting on Alex being discharged and emphasizing that she was responsible for Alex's health. Although Jordan insisted that nothing unusual had happened and that these were self-inflicted injuries, her tone did not convince anyone. Therefore, it was decided that she would be taken to the police station for further questioning. Initially, Jordan denied any wrongdoing, maintaining Alex was self-harming. However, when Alex's parents arrived after visiting him in the hospital, Jordan's story changed. She began to describe in detail the abuse she inflicted on Alex, claiming she treated him like a dog and that he couldn't escape her. At the same time, Jordan alleged that Alex's supposed infidelity and deliberate provocation led to her violent behavior. She also stated that he was mentally ill and had a history of self-injury. Alex's parents refuted these claims, but Alex himself was initially hesitant to testify against his wife. It wasn't until after receiving medical treatment and counseling that Alex felt brave enough to share the horrific experiences he endured at home over the years. Jordan wasn't overly concerned about her upcoming trial, expecting at most an administrative penalty. However, after all the testimony was heard, the judge found 22-year-old Jordan Worth guilty of serious charges. These included deliberately causing severe bodily harm, both physical and emotional abuse, and controlling behavior, Jordan was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. Not even her status as a mother of 2 young children reduced the severity of the sentence. The court's decision shocked Jordan. Jordan's children remained in the care of their father and grandparents while she served her sentence. After years of recovering from her trauma, Alex now devotes her time to helping others, especially victims of domestic violence. After serving 5 years of a 7.5-year sentence, Jordan is set to be paroled on July 4, 2023. As part of her parole, she is prohibited from contacting Alex Kostial and their children. Jordan has started a new life, is engaged to Adam Steph, and is expecting their child. Back, mystery lovers, today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Diogo Goncalves. Diogo Goncalves, born in 1999 in the city of Albura, Portugal, is an only child in a poor but hardworking family. His family made a living mainly from the unstable tourism industry. His parents always considered Diogo a good son. Those who knew him described Diogo as kind, responsible, hardworking, reliable, and very friendly. He enjoyed making friends and was close to his family. Diogo attended high school in his hometown. After graduating, he began studying computer science. To pay for his studies and living expenses, Diogo applied for a job at McDonald's in 2015, at the age of 16. When he was 17, his life suddenly took a major turn when his father suffered a stroke and fell into a vegetative state. That same year, while Diogo and his mother were trying to cope with his father's difficult situation, another tragedy occurred. Diogo's mother, who had always supported him in his studies and upbringing, was involved in a traffic accident. While she was on her way to work at the shopping mall where she worked as a cleaner, a car hit her, dragging her for several meters and causing her to die from her injuries. Although the driver fled, the police identified him and brought him to court. While Diogo awaited the verdict on the perpetrator of his mother's death, he had to move to a medical facility to receive the necessary care. His aunt, concerned about Diogo's situation, invited him to live with her, but the two had a serious disagreement. After a few weeks, they could no longer live together. Diogo told a friend about his situation, and the friend's parents offered him a room in their house in the Albufeira neighborhood. Here, Diogo was close to friends and people who helped him feel at home. Despite his young age, Diogo has shown an excellent ability to handle and overcome difficulties with patience and optimism. In 2017, at the age of 18, Diogo graduated with a degree in computer technology and completed a 6-month internship at Villa Vita Park, a top 5-star hotel. Diogo's abilities impressed the directors, and they offered him a job at the hotel as a technician. In 2018, Diogo decided to accept the offer and left the fast food chain where he had worked for almost a year as a shift manager. He entered a new phase of his life, envisioning a future filled with opportunities that would help him rise above the hardships he had experienced. After working at the company for a while and contemplating brighter days, he decided to buy a car. Diogo got along well with his colleagues, especially a girl he had a crush on, Maria Malvero, a 19-year-old hotel security guard. Maria Malvero was born into a normal family and, like Diogo, has gone through many hardships. Her mother suffered from mental illness, and her father left when she was very young, leaving her never to see him again. Maria, who works in security, became interested in martial arts and started practicing karate. She dreamed of becoming a police officer but was rejected by the academy because of her tattoos. This frustrated her, and she decided to join the SEER Info training course, which specializes in training security guards for the private security sector. Diogo has feelings for Maria and has expressed them openly to her from the beginning, but she does not reciprocate and maintains a cold attitude. Diogo is very fond of Maria, so much so that he turns down an attractive job at the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon just because he does not want to be away from her. He often brings her meals while she is on duty. Over time, Diogo and Maria became close, and people around them saw them as a couple, although there was no romantic relationship between them. Maria told Diogo that she did not want a relationship with him because she had just gotten out of a toxic relationship with a naval officer. However, she kept in touch with Diogo, causing him to harbor hopes of a future with her. Diogo did not give up hope and always tried to be close to her and please her. One day, Diogo was devastated when he accidentally saw a video on social media of Maria kissing another girl. Diogo was upset because he thought she should have told him that she didn't like boys, which was why they would never be together. Diogo's best friend, Fabio, tried to reassure him by saying that girls sometimes do that, but Diogo didn't believe him and insisted that Maria had lied to him, which was why she refused to be with him. Despite his disappointment, Diogo and Maria remained friends, and Maria continued to accept his gifts and invitations to dates. Diogo tried to take her home several times, but she always told him that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and she didn't want to let another man into her apartment. Time passed, and in December 2019, Diogo was informed that he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which had occurred 3 years earlier. After receiving the sum of €70,000, the young man decided it was time to buy a house so that he would no longer have to pay rent. Diogo shared the news of his mother's insurance money with Maria. A few weeks later, Maria decided to quit her job at the hotel. She said that she could no longer bear the comments of her colleagues about her alleged relationship with Diogo. Maria also justified it by saying that she wanted to spend more time with her mother, who needed more attention because of her mental illness. At that time, Diogo had no reason to doubt Maria's words. However, later events showed that her decision to quit her job at the hotel was for darker reasons, and that is when the third character in the story, Mariana, 20, appears. She works as a nurse at the hospital and has a stable relationship with Maria. Maria and Mariana live together at Mariana's parents' house, as they are not yet financially stable enough to have their own house where they can enjoy their relationship. This is exactly Maria's plan when she learns about the large amount of money that Diogo will receive. From that moment on, Maria begins to get closer to Diogo. It turns out that Maria has shared information with Mariana, and together they decide to trick Diogo into gaining access to his bank account data and steal the money he received. The problem arises when one day, after being rejected by Maria several times, Maria suddenly tells Diogo that she wants to spend a romantic evening with him. This was truly a gift for Diogo. He couldn't believe his ears. After waiting so long, the thought of being with the girl he loved made him extremely happy. The meeting was set for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was delighted and had no idea why the girl suddenly changed her mind. As soon as Diogo entered, Mariana gave him the orange juice she had brought herself, but the drink contained an unexpected ingredient: 3 ampoules of diazepam, a central nervous system drug with anti-anxiety and sedative effects. Mariana was the one who suggested using this substance, having stolen the drug from the hospital where she worked. Mariana's plan was to anesthetize Diogo, access his bank information, and possibly manipulate his fingers to bypass the phone lock. Mariana is said to have waited in a car outside the house while her friend carried out the plan. She even texted Maria several times to see if the drug was working, as it took longer than she had anticipated. The situation inside the house became increasingly tense. Diogo did not understand what was happening and began to get anxious. Maria then tried to calm him down by promising to dance erotically, but first, she had to tie him to a table. After being in that position for a few minutes, Diogo panicked and asked Maria to let him go, but she became aggressive and began to beat Diogo. Using her martial arts skills, Maria overpowered Diogo, knocked him to the floor, and wrapped her arms around his neck, preventing him from breathing. According to Mariana, Maria then told her to go inside the apartment, and when she entered, she found Diogo lying on the floor. Mariana asked Maria what happened and criticized her for going off plan. The original plan was just to steal the key and take his money. When Diogo was unresponsive, Mariana performed CPR. However, when he regained consciousness, he became very agitated and tried to attack Mariana. In response to Diogo's reaction, Maria overpowered him by grabbing him from behind, throwing him to the floor, and strangling him again. Diogo lost his life at the hands of the girl he loved, and part of Saturday, but these messages were increasingly uncharacteristic of him. On Saturday morning, Diogo's boss received a text message saying that he would not be returning to work because he had met a French woman and was moving in with her. This story seemed very strange to the boss because Diogo was a responsible person and would never quit his job so suddenly. In search of answers, the boss started calling Diogo, but he did not answer. He then received another message saying that he was not well enough to talk on the phone. Diogo's boss replied that he could only calm down if they could talk. He wanted to hear his voice and his explanation for what was happening. The reactions of Diogo's relatives to the messages Maria and Mariana sent convinced the girls to change their plans to explain their boyfriend's sudden disappearance. They decided to make it seem as if Diogo had decided to end his life and planned to dismember his body to get rid of the evidence. Maria later claimed that they were inspired by the TV show Dexter, about a forensic scientist who kills criminals and evades justice by removing traces of his crimes by dismembering his victims. After carrying out their evil plot, they stuffed Diogo's body into a trash bag and put it in the trunk of their car. They went to an ATM and shopped at a mall, where their hugs and laughter were captured on security cameras. They then went to a resident's house to begin dismembering the victim. Finally, Maria and Mariana placed Diogo's body in a black bag and put the rest. French couple was stunned to discover Diogo's head. Diogo's hands and feet were also found after a thorough police search. Investigators said the circumstances of Diogo's death were strange. He was brutally murdered despite being a quiet person who did not associate with people of questionable reputation. Investigators could not find any hostile forces against Diogo. The police continued to investigate and soon discovered that Diogo had received a large inheritance after the death of his mother. Through the wire transfer investigation, they discovered that a large sum of money had been transferred from Diogo's account to Maria. Detectives tracked down Maria to find out why Diogo's money had ended up in her hands. Maria tried to convince the police that she had killed Diogo because he had abused her. Maria claimed that was the reason she had left the hotel before the incident. However, when police examined text messages between the victim and Maria, they found this was not true. Maria said that she and Diogo had become close after she left her job. During her first meeting with the police, Maria claimed that she was the only person responsible for planning and carrying out the shooting. Maria insisted that Mariana had nothing to do with the crime. However, Mariana's testimony contradicted Maria's. Mariana explained that Maria said she wanted to rob Diogo of his money and intended to kill him. Mariana said Maria wanted to make him suffer so that he would give her his bank account password. The evidence gathered by investigators was enough to convict Maria and Mariana. Detectives had Diogo's phone records, cell phone records, and ATM surveillance video. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and appeared in court in June of that year. The judge followed Maria's account of the events, and Maria pleaded guilty while repeatedly denying Mariana's involvement in the case. She said Diogo's body had been in a suitcase in a car parked in the garage for 2 days, and that's where the remains were dismembered. The judge then asked Mariana where she was when Diogo's body was dismembered. It was notable that the joints of the body were separated with great precision. All eyes in the courtroom were on Mariana, who was also a longtime nurse. Mariana answered all the questions and said that everyone knew she worked at the hospital, so they suspected that she was the one who dismembered the body. She further explained that using the internet, the matter could be cleared up. The judge ordered Maria and Mariana to be detained because this was a serious crime under the law. The crime was committed in a cold, calculated, reckless, and extremely cruel manner. A few months later, the trial took place on February 24, 2021. In her testimony at the trial on February 26, 2021, Maria stated that she initially sought revenge on Diogo for his violent behavior but did not intend to kill him. She admitted that her goal was to humiliate him. Maria also confirmed that her friend had no connection with Diogo and did not know about the murder. Maria argued that her actions were not motivated by Diogo's money. In addition, Maria and Mariana attended the trial together but avoided looking at each other. It was rumored that after their arrest and imprisonment, they ended their relationship. On April 27, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Maria was found guilty of aggravated murder, complicity in indignity to a corpse, robbery, unlawful access, fraud, carjacking, and illegal possession of a weapon. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison and ordered to pay €265,000 in compensation to Diogo's father. Mariana was acquitted of murder but convicted of desecration of a corpse, complicity, and fraud. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison for these charges. However, she was released because the charges she was convicted of did not require pretrial detention until the final verdict was delivered. The court determined that Mariana's attempt to revive Diogo showed that she had no intention of killing him. The judge took into account Mariana's confession, in which she accepted full